I told them that I felt it was important to let the communities that are most effective speak in order first. So it's not like we're trying to put anybody at the end of this. It's a long day, and I appreciate everybody's endurance. So, but the next communities that we're going to hear from are very affected, very concerned by this, and so it's important that we do this in order. We have grouped this together, calling it the Foothill Communities, and appreciate people waiting. So I'm now going to turn to this organization. Good afternoon, sir. Go ahead. And if
my
we
name
could
is
get
Mike
the door
Trivich.
closed.
I live in Cagle Canyon. I'm not here to oppose any of the alternative routes. There's plenty of people here to do that.
I'm sorry, hold on. Let's restart the clock. Could we give this gentleman the courtesy of some quiet, please? Thank you. Sir,
So, like I said, I'm here to edit an existing route. I think it's important to note that S14 route, the S14 freeway does not go through Sylmar, San Fernando, or Pacoima. It ends at the 5 freeway. The S14 is equated to going through that. There is a parallel route down the 5 freeway. It has an existing corridor. It doesn't affect any communities in the way. It does cost more because it has to be a tunnel. But that's what they're doing, is they're saving money by going above ground and going through the communities rather than going on the parallel path down the 5 freeway. It goes from the 14 freeway on one end, and it goes past the Burbank Airport at the other end, so it connects both ends. The only difference is the parallel path and the additional cost. I think it's important to consider the cost of the entire project, not just the incremental cost on each of the 4 paths that are being proposed. The main issue is go underground. And we have a right-of-way, and we have a path. At the Burbank Airport, it's real close to the 5 freeway. You can put a station underground at the 5 freeway, a short link on Little Metro going underground into the airport. You can check your luggage there, hop on the little bus, goes underground to the airport, no problem. I think it's significant that the eastern corridors have been adjusted with feedback from the communities. The SR14 corridor, which is not just the freeway, has not been adjusted, and I think this one needs adjustment. I think it's important for the HSR board to add a reasonable alternative to the existing route. Let it compete on its own merits. Let's find out what it really costs. This route addresses almost all of the concerns of everybody here. I mean, that's the major issue, is the at-grade through communities.
Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to allow others to
so
speak.
it says, please consider this route.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Kelly Rose. I'm a Lakeview Terrace resident. That picture is a picture of my 2-year-old, who I chose not to bring today, and his pony Cookie, and her pony, sorry about that, and my daughter Sophia. Now, the other day on the way to preschool, my daughter asked me, she asked me if we were going to lose our home. And I can't repeat the story without getting upset, because I had to tell her why. I asked her why, and she said, because you are always talking about how you're going to save it. And I said, that's right, baby. And she said, well, can kids help? So today I brought her with me, because I did the best I could to assure my sweet 5-year-old that she has nothing to worry about. But based on the responsiveness that we've received in our area from the High-Speed Rail Authority, I can only pray that when I respond to her, I'm being honest. And I can only hope that when I tell her that she is safe and will not be forced from her home, that it's not a lie. She's here with me today because she represents the generation expected to utilize this train. But unfortunately, she is one of the tens of thousands of children who will grow up not appreciating the outdated transportation technology, but most likely resenting the project as it forced her out of her family home, destroyed her sense of security and her faith in her state. Now, this is the legacy that would be being created this is the legacy you are creating for this little girl by not acknowledging that the high-speed rail project needs years more research, planning, and accurate budgeting before even considering a possible route. And even if you do decide to acknowledge that a bridge through the last, meaning E2, through the last remaining affordable open space neighborhood in Los Angeles is a terrible idea, we are still faced with the possibility that our open space could be used as a construction zone, staging ground, excuse me, which, if we're all being honest, is just as horrific. So I ask you, the board, step up, to think of this little girl and others like her when you make decisions for her future. And if you say no, if it's not worth the devastation and debt it will cause, and you say no to that, I applaud you. And if you say yes, then please tell me what reason you would use, and I'll stop. What reason I should tell her that justifies her losing her home. And when you go home, I hope you think of us, because we think of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Gail Wilkie. I've lived in Shadow Hills more than 40 years. I've owned horses more than 50 years. And you've gathered by now that no one wants high-speed rail going through their communities and destroying what they've worked so hard to build. I voted yes to high-speed rail. I am so sorry. I would love to have a chance to redo that vote. And I would like to see the state of California give its citizens a chance to vote again on whether they want to do this high-speed rail. It is so destructive. Now, a lot of people on the SR 14 route do not want to see it going through their communities. I understand that. I'm in sympathy with that. But when we voted for Proposition 1A, we voted to put this high-speed rail through existing corridors of transportation. And then somewhere out of the wilderness came this idea of going through the mountains, under the mountains. The forest is the last large area that is open to recreation for the people of the citizens and people of Los Angeles. This kind of construction in the forest would cause great damage to the environment, to the water table. It simply is not a good idea. We've had many people say, well, tunnel underground. Please be considerate of the idea that there are multiple earthquake faults through the area that we're going to tunnel through, or that you're going to tunnel through. And we are in danger of dewatering the forest above it. A great deal of consideration should be made on considering the forest routes, E routes. In addition, E2 takes the route of the train above ground. This is entirely unacceptable for reasons you've heard from other communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Whoops. Hi. My name is Jerry Brass-Summy, and I'm a California native and a 4-year resident of Shadow Hills. I'd like to preface my comments with a couple of quick notes. First, I do realize that this is not a forum for political debate today. And second, that I do have tremendous respect for both the High Speed Rail Board and its employees, who I know are faced daily with the complaints of competing communities who just want this train gone. That said, just 6 days ago, the Public Policy Institute of California released a survey showing that a full 69% of Californians feel the supply of water in their communities is a big problem. 39% feel the water crisis and drought is the most important issue facing our state, ahead of the economy, ahead of jobs. Improving transportation so that one can get from San Francisco to LA in 3 hours is nowhere on this list. California cannot grow without water. Without growth, there will be insufficient ridership, and the train will become a bankrupt set of tracks from Madero to Fresno. Water first, train later. So why am I telling you this? I believe that our beloved governor should have issued an executive order months ago, instructing the California High-Speed Rail Authority for a time to become the California High-Speed Water Authority, to find the fastest way to resolve this water crisis. High-speed rail already has the engineers, geologists, environmentalists, consultants, and attorneys that could turn their attention to solving our water problems now. It has become so obvious that this governor's legacy should be water and not this train. He still has 3 years left, and it is the responsibility of a governor to switch gears, reassign priorities, and reappropriate funds when necessary to deal with the most critical issue at hand in our state. I am reaching out to you here because I don't have the good governor's phone number. And second, I can always pray that one of his staffers might be here today, although the room's half empty now, or that some trusted colleague will get the nerve to tell him it is utterly necessary that he make this change. Can I just have 10 more seconds? Much of the anger that you see here today is because for many, and especially those in the Central Valley, first the state has not dealt with their water needs, and then high-speed rail has come in and divided and taken their land. First things first, water first, train later. And we'd welcome a visit from the governor, like I know Mr. Richards and Ms. Perez-Estelano has done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Dupre, and I'm a resident and property owner in Shadow Hills. And I vehemently oppose the alternate routes known as E2 and E3, which will have an extremely negative impact on my community as well as everyone else's. I'm not a politician, but I am a California resident and taxpayer. As I said the Pledge of Allegiance this morning and put my hand on my heart, I pondered the words of liberty and justice for all. As we pit community against community here, I don't mind the project as long as it goes through your neighborhood. That's great. Perhaps those involved in who benefits, basically. Perhaps those who are involved in construction or procuring lucrative contracts, but who will pay the tab? Who buys something with an unknown price? How much revenue will actually be generated by ridership? I implore you to not destroy Shadow Hills or any other community for the benefit of a chosen few.
Hello, my name is Cynthia Dupre, and I am a resident and property owner of Shadow Hills, or in Shadow Hills. I sympathize with everyone that has been in this room today because we're all looking at just a really, really bad deal. For the E routes, we just found out about it in September. Now, we were blindsided with this, so we have not had an equal opportunity to be able to learn about the project and to be able to organize and to be able to respond. We have been at an extreme disadvantage. Again, I don't want it in your neighborhood or your neighborhood. I'm just saying we haven't had a chance to adequately be educated on what's going to happen. E2 is right next to my house. Now, they've been very clear that the route could change a little. What does that mean? Will I lose my house to eminent domain? Very likely. If not, eminent domain will destroy the property values of my home. I thought I was going to be okay in retirement. I bet none of you are facing eminent domain. You're pretty comfortable. Well, I'm not, because I will not be able to sell my house or get a loan on my house or do anything with my house because of what may or may not happen. I just found out in September. That's less than a year ago. Also, if there is eminent domain, what happens in eminent domain, it can take years for deals to be made. That means years of vacant homes in an area that's prone to fires, prone to vagrancy, prone to drugs. So I'm very, very afraid of that. I'm very afraid of the destruction of the landscape of my community. Also, at the meetings that I've gone to, they've been very vague about where are the ingress and egress points going to be. No one really knows. Oh, it hasn't been decided. Those are going to be big roads. And also, I haven't seen a lot of pictures about the underground tunnel. So we all say tunnel it, but we need to be educated. What does that mean? What does that mean? One last thing. To build the proposed tunnel under the 710 freeway is only 6.3 miles. They said that that's going to cost $5.6 billion for 6 miles? So how much is this going to cost? Where are we going to get that money? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gina Keel-Cruz. I'm a homeowner in Lakeview Terrace, and I'm also a licensed civil engineer. I could stand up here and talk about how this project impacts my property and my family, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to talk about an issue that affects everyone, and that's water. The East Corridor routes will cause irreparable harm to precious natural water resources in the Angeles National Forest. All routes through the forest or the Tujunga Wash, whether above ground or below ground, could have a severe impact on the water resources in this area. The construction of the E2 bridge across the Tujunga Wash poses an enormous risk for contamination of water in the wash. The alignment of all three forest routes crosses numerous springs, including Oak Spring, Fascination Spring, Larson Spring, Indian Spring, Hidden Spring, Limestone Spring, Merrick Spring, Cagle Spring, and more. The water in these springs is not just storm runoff, these springs run year-round. The City of Los Angeles imports approximately 85% of its drinking water. The remaining 15% comes from local sources, primarily groundwater. 80% of the city's groundwater comes from the San Fernando Groundwater Basin. The springs and the Tujunga Wash provide fresh, clean water that ultimately percolates into the groundwater basin. Potential dewatering and contamination could have an irreversible impact that would not easily be mitigated. The state of California is in a severe drought, as everyone knows. We cannot afford to waste one single drop of our precious local water. The East Corridor routes must be removed from consideration to avoid risking our precious water resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Delson. I live in Shadow Hills. Mr. Richard, I have a recurring nightmare. Our rural neighborhoods near the above-ground portion of the E2 route are under attack by an invasion force of noisy, polluting trucks preparing our bucolic communities for the occupying force, aka high-speed rail. This army of trucks travels on its stomach of diesel fuel, ravaging local roads and adding pollution to our already greenhouse gas-laden air. We can be like Japan and get used to wearing those fashionable masks every day. Think you live far enough away to escape the noise, that it can be mitigated? Nope. The sounds of those engines reverberate in Big Tujunga Wash, echoing into surrounding communities like Lakeview Terrace and Cagle Canyon, Sunland, Tujunga, Pacoima, we didn't forget you, and Shadow Hills. You'll soon experience huge potholes on local roads jammed with traffic caused by the 1 million plus truck trips needed to remove dirt spewed out by Big Bertha. Most likely Vulcan will love having all that excavated dirt dumped in Sun Valley. And let's not forget the trucks bringing in tunnel supplies and materials. Experience the thrill of road closures, great late-to-work excuses, but really sad if your disabled child misses the equine-assisted therapy program he loves. Feeling your area is already overburdened with industrial infrastructure, and the further degradation of the environment and quality of life would just be unbearable? The answer is a resounding yes. No E2 route, please, through an environmentally sensitive area. End the nightmare of above-ground routes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to hold this. My name is Cynthia Urias. I'm a resident of Shadow Hills. My husband and I, we moved there 4 years ago from Burbank because I grew up on a dairy farm with a lot of open space, a lot of room to grow up as a child, to really experience that, that wonderful way to grow up and learn how animals actually live and see and touch them. And so Shadow Hills is actually the last community in the LA area that was desirable to us. And so, like I say, we've been here 4 years and absolutely love it. I am here today to represent Shadow Hills and support all the other communities that have been here today. Obviously, I oppose the proposed high-speed well. I'm so nervous. High-speed rail routes from Palmdale to Burbank. It really will devastate this community and the tranquility of it all. Not to mention, there's so much data behind it that I'm not going to speak to, but the horses in the community have the flight or run response. The birds, all the endangered species, there's so much is going to impact the water supply, not to mention potential earthquake impacts. What I just want to mention is my background is, you know, I'm a manager. I'm in management of a big corporate company. I understand when you're given goals by somebody else that you have to meet. You don't have a lot of say in those. You just have to meet your goals every year, right? And if you don't, you might not get your bonus. You might not get your next promotion. I'm just asking you guys that if there's anything you've heard today that actually moved you, I hope that you wrote it down and you'll go back when we're all finished today and you'll actually dwell on that as a team and not be swayed by one or two people that may have more power than you. I'm just asking that you think of it as a person, that would you make that decision if it was your neighborhood, if it was your children that were impacted. And in the big scheme of things, I know when you have a job, your goal is to always leave that job better than how you found it. So I hope that whatever route you choose, you think that, and you can honestly sleep well at night, that is better than when you found it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm guessing you didn't buy that outfit
No,
at a retail store.
Yes, please
they don't
acknowledge
have
my
that at
shirt.
Kohl's.
Yes, it will be available online after this. No, I'm kidding. My name is Christy Clark, and I am an elected member of the Sunland-Tujunga Neighborhood Council. The foothill communities, the San Fernando Valley, the Angeles National Forest, and the San Gabriel National Monument will all suffer permanent environmental and physical changes and loss of visual character due to this destructive tunneling. None of the proposed routes are acceptable. Most of the proposed routes will bore deeply underground, resulting in millions of tons of dirt to be hauled away through the San Gabriel National Monument using trucks and conveyor belts that will create a toxic atmosphere for all of our communities. The current routes are not feasible. They run through wildlife corridors, they threaten endangered species, they will divide communities in half with 20-foot-high death walls, threatening our precious water supply, running over dangerous seismic fault lines, and will destroy our Angeles National Forest. Our entire city will suffer permanent water loss, physical alterations, traffic, dirt, noise, and vibrations for decades to come. There must be a better way to get from Palmdale to Burbank, or better yet, Palmdale to Union Station, which is what the voters actually voted for in 2008. We are recommending that you reconsider all of the Palmdale to Burbank routes before entering into this costly EIR process. This is not what California stakeholders voted for, and the project has become dramatically cost prohibitive. Thank you for your time, and please remember to listen to these comments as you're reading the SAA, because our communities are really not what that document says. So thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Carol Bartolotto, and I'm a resident of Cagle Canyon. And I just wanted to say that I'm actually incredibly concerned about our water supply because of our drought and the impact that every single tunnel route would have on the drought. And in particular, in Cagle Canyon, the E1 route, there are people up there in our upper Cagle that actually are on wells. And I don't really see how there's a way to mitigate the loss of that water. There's nothing feasible. And I did ask. I went to a couple of the open houses. Well, we'll mitigate it. How? Nobody could answer. That's not really good enough. I think we need to do these studies before we actually, go into the EIR process. And related to the E2 route, do we really want another Morro Bay on our hands? Have you ever been to Morro Bay, anybody? Because if you have, you drive up the coast of gorgeous Southern California to the Central Coast, you see beautiful Morro Bay and beautiful Morro Rock, and next to it you see a power plant with 3 smokestacks. The first time I saw it was in 1990, and I thought to myself, what in the world were they thinking? Why in the world would they destroy the natural beauty and environment of Southern California? And you know what? I live in Cagle Canyon, but I say absolutely no to the E2 route, because that's exactly what would happen for the 500,000 people that drive over the 210 freeway. They would look over there and they would say, who made that decision? Why in the world would they destroy the beautiful Tujunga Wash area by having a train coming out of the mountain? It is completely insane to me. And adding to that, we'd have the negative impact of noise and vibration for the entire community. That area is a special area please do, I implore that you do not destroy our area by having any of the routes through the forest. And I just want to say I'm not going to throw the E14 route or the SR14 route under the bus. We need to come up with a solution that works for all the communities, because we don't want them to hate us, and we don't want to pit people against each other. And I hear that happening, and it's not right. We need to come up with something that's equitable for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Ike. I'm the land use chairman for the Shadow Hills Property Owners Association. Been involved in land use issues for probably 40 years, ever since I passed the bar exam. Don't get paid for this stuff, but spend a lot of time. So I'm here to save you folks about $2 million. And the way that is because you want desktop studies to prove, before you go into the environmental impact report analysis or EIS analysis. I dug this up. This is the master mitigation plan for the Big Tahunga Wash Mitigation Bank. That's exactly where you're going over for E2. This is what your SAA should have said. It talks about all the endangered plants and animals. It talks about all the habitat. It doesn't, your SAA report is seriously deficient in this regard. So I made a scanned copy, gave it to Juan Carlos today, and so you folks will now have this. And I urge you to go back and redo the SAA before you start the millions of dollars in environmental impact reports just to redo the same project. I called the Chambers group who did this analysis to see if it were online. They said, oh no. I said, well, do you have a copy? Well, maybe. I said, can I get a copy? No. I said, and I actually have a copy in my office because I'm kind of a hoarder on environmental documents. And so I said, well, they said, what do you want it for? They said, are you going to sue me? I go, no. I said, I'm going to use it for HSR. Oh, we can't give it to you. It's probably a conflict of interest because we represent HSR in consulting contracts. So basically, the people that you are paying to give you consulting work did this report. I don't know whether they gave it to you, but you ought to demand it of them because it'll save you a lot of money. And by the way, I'm sorry you guys couldn't make the meeting that we had in January where 2,000 people in the foothill community showed up. We actually had to turn people away. It's online, but some of the representatives from HSR were there. But it's really, people are really, really angry. Thank you.
My name is Susan Stedman, and I'm a 21-year resident of Shadow Hills. The E2 option is unnecessary and redundant and would have more cumulative measurable and non-measurable impacts than the E1 and E3. For example, HSR is only measuring the number of residential sensitive noise receptors within 1/2 mile from an alignment. The gun range in Little Tahunga Canyon can be heard from 2.5 miles away. Cagle Canyon can hear the metro train from 3.5 miles away. HSR's mitigation distance for sensitive noise receptors does not consider the unpredictable, immitigable, and unbearable way noise will reverberate through the hillside areas of our natural amphitheater's valley. This means the E2 would allow the foothill communities less hours of sleep than convicts in prison. Please remove the E2 tunnels, tunnel portals, bridge, and at-grade alignment in the Big Tahunga Wash from consideration. It is absurd to believe that technical and scientific analysis of the E2 can mitigate the visual, aesthetic, and tranquil character of our foothill communities. The incompatible E2 above-ground segment over the Big Tahunga Valley would permanently destroy the farm ranch character that is our lifeblood. The E2 would be one of 3 bridges within a 1/2 mile area over the wash. This would create severe impacts to our properties and quality of life. Boring the disruptive E2 alignment through the heart of our hillside communities is another attempt to urbanize one of the few remaining affordable, open space, middle-class areas in LA. Yeah. It is vital to protect and preserve the ecologically sensitive Big Tahunga Wash from HSR's Chinatization of California's dwindling open spaces. No E2.
My name is Dale Stedman. I also live in Shadow Hills. That was my wife. For the following reasons, the above ground E2 alignment over the Big Tahunga Wash should be removed. I remove you, away with you. Get off of me. The elevation of the train in the E2 route that crosses Wentworth Street is at grade. A street bridge would need to be built over the high-speed rail. Since emergency vehicles and fire trucks must use Wentworth, the grades of the bridge cannot exceed 15%, which means that the top of the bridge will exceed the height of the 100-foot cliff and require ramps in excess of 300 feet in each direction. It would block the view of the mountains and the Big Tahunga Wash for many, many homes. Ugly. There is insufficient space between the top of the E2 Wentworth Street tunnel and the surface of the top of the cliff to properly construct a tunnel based on your requirement, which dictates the top of the tunnels be located 60 to 80 feet below surface levels. Your own studies say this is infeasible. Wentworth is an important emergency route in Shadow Hills. A large staging area for a tunnel portal on this route would be required during the multi-year construction phase and impede safety vehicles. Big problem. There is not enough space to set up a staging area between the bluff and the Big Tahunga Wash. Construction at this location would be impossible since there is a stream flowing all year, 365 days, alongside Wentworth Street. This stream, only about 4 yards away in one point, flows from San Gabriel's to the San Fernando groundwater basin. The tunnel staging area would not be able to avoid this stream. It is too close to Wentworth Street. For these reasons, the above-ground E2 bridge and Wentworth Street tunnel portal by the Big Tahunga Wash is unfeasible to build at this locale, and it splits Shadow Hills in half, underground in the EIR.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is...
Maybe it's easier to just hold. Okay, if you got it.
My name is Teresa Ortiz. I'm a resident of Shadow Hills. A very important element in our foothill area is the equine. I'm here to give you the scientific standpoint from our local veterinarian, Dr. David Robertson, who specializes in horse medicine. Horses are considered flight animals. When they get scared or frightened, they run away. This can cause injury to the horse or its rider. The reason for flight response in horses is because they are hardwired from a gland called amygdala, which connects to the brain. What causes horses to engage that hardwire flight response? Situations can be audible, loud noises, visual, moving objects, big or small. When the flight response kicks in, it's very hard to regain control of the horse. Even the best trained horse can be overcome by flight instinct, causing injury to the horse or the rider. Dr. Robertson is certain you can never completely remove the flight instinct. This stress is not only for horses that are ridden. Horses living near stressful areas can develop medical problems like stomach ulcers, colic due to cuffing, lameness, issues from constant pacing. As a large moving object, the high-speed rail would definitely be considered stressful to horses. Dr. Robertson has been riding stress-free in Hansen Dam since 1989, and he believes the years of construction as well as the finished high-speed rail project would be a detriment to future stress-free horse rides.
Thank you.
And on record, I'm against the high-speed rail. I think it needs to be, you need to go back to the drawing board and needs to be voted again.
Thank you. Since it's not considered healthy to be sitting all day. I'm going to stand, but I'm going to be listening intently while I'm doing that. So.
Hello, my name is Seal Borman. I live in Lakeview Terrace. I'd like to take you guys on a little trip right now. I was raised in Detroit, Michigan, and you all know what happened to Detroit. You all know what has happened to the middle of America, Cleveland and all of those countries, all of those cities, counties. I'd like to say something. You know, we're missing a wonderful opportunity. Right here in the San Fernando Valley, we have a place that always reminded me of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Can you believe that? You know why? Because of the mountains, the streams, the horses. And I said to myself, this is a great destination spot. This is a great place that could be developed into something really, really spectacular. And it seems that we're so busy trying to destroy this area, we're not looking at what we could do to spread the wealth around and have people coming from all over the world to come right to our little piece of heaven in the San Fernando Valley. Legacy is what we leave behind us. I was taught to leave things better than when I found them. The intent and determination to push through this high-speed train might destroy a wonderful advantage that our young people, that people have been talking about in the future, that could develop this part of California. Let us not miss that opportunity like we've done in Detroit and Cleveland and other places. We've got to look at what we have and make it better and not leave it worse than the way that we found it. I live in Lakeview Terrace. I'm a songwriter. And I wrote a song called Lakeview Terrace. It goes like this. Nestled in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, close to all the things I've grown to love, there's nothing like the view looking off into the valley as the morning sun rises above. In the terrace, Lakeview Terrace, a very special place where you can see lots of nature's little secrets. And if you take the time, you'll be amazed at what you'll find. And I think we should spread it around and let people from other places know, coming out here, we have the Rim of the Valley Trail. We have all types of things that you could come and enjoy yourself and have a good time right here in Lakeview Terrace and in the San Fernando Valley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Richard and the board. My name is Catherine Dan, and I'm a 15-year resident of Shadow Hills. And I'm going to make a confession that I wasn't planning on making that might ostracize me from my community. But I am from a family of railroad people. My grandfather worked for the railroad, the Union Pacific. My dad, my uncle, and my cousin worked for the Southern Pacific. And I can't imagine any of them approving of any of these routes through any of these communities. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Angeles Forest. It's a serious misconception that the tunneled routes under the Angeles National Forest and the San Gabriel National Monument would have little impact on the environment. This offense to our forests will start with the EIR. They will have to drill holes hundreds of feet deep to determine what lies beneath the mountains, such as soil conditions and water resources. In order to do that, we have been told that land would have to be cleared for helicopters to deposit these rigs to drill the holes at intervals along the forest route. So just the environmental study of the forest routes is a damaging act in itself. According to the high-speed rail website, tunneled areas would have to have above-ground safety portal facilities. The estimation is that there will be at least 3 of these above-ground facilities that would be in the forest. Each facility equates to 15 acres of national forest being cut down, paved, and fenced. Access roads to these portals have to have a minimum of 18 feet wide to accommodate emergency vehicles. From this report, it's quite obvious that tunneling will have a huge impact even at ground level. The loss of wildlife, trees, and natural springs during this process in no way can be mitigated. Once that land is gone, it is gone forever. So in closing, I ask you, would you consider tunneling below Mount Rushmore? Or building a high-speed rail bridge across the Grand Canyon? Why should our Angeles National Forest and San Gabriel National Monument be any less important or sacred? President Obama dedicated this land as a national monument for everyone, and we have a responsibility to protect this land for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lois Dayan. That's my sister. I'm in the same railroad family. There are many things about high-speed rail going through our area that has kept me up many nights. It first started when I accidentally heard about the yellow banana going through our community. The first scoping meeting I could attend was held in Sylmar. Imagine my horror when an engineer said to me, "You don't have to worry about the S14 route going through Sylmar anymore. The train will be going through Lakeview Terrace and Shadow Hills." It appears like high-speed rail is trying to divide us by putting community against community. That is how the communication from high-speed rail has continued. I have attended many of the open house meetings held in different communities, and I have received different answers to the same question depending on which high-speed rail expert I am talking to. An open question and answer session was not allowed during any presentation at the open houses. This one-way communication was not only frustrating, but disrespectful to our communities. The community leaders and volunteers of the Central Valley to the Santa Clarita Valley to the San Fernando Valley have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours of personal time to attend meetings like this one, held on a work day in the middle of the week in an inconvenient location, and only having 2 minutes to speak today. I know you're trying to meet deadlines, but that should not be at the detriment of our communities. High-speed rail needs to do better when it comes to rural ranch, farm communities, populated areas, as well as environmentally sensitive areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to our next speaker, I really hate to do this because people have been waiting, but I haven't left the podium all day. Can we take a 5 or 10 minute break? And then we'll be right back. So we'll just do that. Let me just offer two thoughts. First is my sincere thanks to the folks from the foothill communities who waited for a few minutes. And the second thought is I'm not quite sure how Rand Paul does those 10-hour filibusters in the Congress. I have a new appreciation for that, regardless of what you think of his politics. That's a pretty amazing thing. All right. Thank you for your patience. Sir, please proceed. Is that microphone on? It's not on, so let's hold the clock until we get the microphone on.
Hello?
It's on?
Is that
okay,
correct?
thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. My name is Joshua Jeffrey, and I'm from Latuna Canyon. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our area, Latuna Canyon is a diverse rural community home to humble, hardworking people who cherish its unique character and isolation in the heart of a metropolis like Los Angeles. We live, work, and recreate in the foothills, hiking or riding our horses through the miles and trails and open space that define our community. Officially designated as a scenic highway, Latuna Canyon Road is home to enthusiastic cyclists every weekend, and good morning. But the construction of either the E2 or E3 tunnels would irreparably damage the character and stability of our community, forcing numerous businesses and families to move or face condemnation. Your representatives assert that deep tunneling would only have limited surface disruptions, but the very nature and geologic setting of the canyon, and by extension the Verdugo and San Gabriel Mountains, demands caution and further study. We live in a highly dynamic environment, situated between numerous active faults and cliff faces, in perpetual danger of liquefaction during any significant seismic or subsurface disruption. The canyon walls would require extensive retainment mitigations, including up to steel reinforcement pylons or alternatively reinforcement walls, which would drastically change the scenic nature and the scenic corridor that we live in. Those residences and businesses in the center of the canyon would be in perpetual danger of subsidence. The alluvial sediments and mixed-face soils which make up the ground beneath their homes would be in constant danger of settlement as the area below is dewatered and grouted in an attempt to ease the forces acting on the tunnel boring machines. Sensitive springs and water resources throughout the foothills are in danger of disappearing from tunnel dewatering and changes to the hydraulic conductivity of the area. Latuna Canyon and the surrounding area's character, community, and environment necessitates its protection. And as a result, we urge the authority to eliminate any infeasible and prohibitively expensive alignments from further consideration and planning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I did.
Hi, Cindy Bloom, Shadow Hills. Not since the Francis Quito Dam disaster has California been the author of such a debacle known as the Eastern Corridor, and in particular, the route called E2. I read your documents, and it is evident that other alignments were eliminated for far fewer reasons than E1, E2, and E3. Remember, these are your reasons that were used as a basis for elimination. 225 alignments were eliminated based on 64 reasons, and the average number of reasons for withdrawal was 2.8. It gets better. 28% of the alignments were eliminated for just 2 reasons. But wait, there's more. 3 alignments were eliminated for no reason. So, no reason is actually a reason. Here are some E2 not so fun facts. Barriers to communities and land use, open spaces, community impacts and concerns, cultural impacts, costly and complex construction, environmental impacts, extensive reconstruction, relocation, history of natural disasters, impact on endangered species, bisection of wilderness lands, new difficult or intrusive tunnel construction required, noise, vibration, seismic concerns, visual impacts, impacts to aquatic resources, that's water, crosses or encroaches on Angeles National Forest. That has been a reason for elimination. Will not follow existing transportation corridors in the proposition. Local citizenry and elected officials' opposition. Right here, that is a reason that was cited for an alignment being eliminated. The conclusion? Other alignments were eliminated for far fewer and less compelling reasons than E1, E2, and E3. Put E2 out of our misery. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Andrade, and I'm from Shadow Hills. I'm a resident there of 15 years, and I oppose the E2 route. In fact, I oppose any route that harms people's homes, lifestyles, communities, businesses, and way of life, property values, etc. Shadow Hills is a beautiful community. It is peaceful. It is filled with nature and animals and beautiful mountains that have been there for probably millions of years. I'm wondering how you're really going to tunnel through those mountains. Shadow Hills is also one of the last equestrian communities in Los Angeles. I'd like to repeat that. It's one of the last equestrian areas in Los Angeles. It is a gem that we must preserve. Once we destroy that land, we can never get it back. Horses, wildlife, public safety will be endangered. Where will all our beautiful horses and wildlife go? Shadow Hills in Sunland actually has a reputation for being an asthmatic community. People settled there because of a healthier lifestyle and better air. What will happen if the rail starts to go through and we start to have emissions and dirt and pollution from building the rail? What will happen to the people's health, the animals' health, etc.? How will you explain all those things to the community? If you destroy our home and businesses and mountains, you will destroy everything that is about Shadow Hills. It is one of our most last and everlasting equestrian areas. I'd also like to point out that President Obama did appoint a monument to our Angeles forest, a beautiful monument, and that beautiful monument was to protect our lands. So I'm wondering how Mr. Obama is going to feel when he finds out you're running a choo-choo through it. You say that this is going to create jobs. Well, what about our jobs and our businesses and our home equity and our lives and our children?
those things will be lost for us. So don't we count too? Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Robert Wood. I'm a architect. Robert Wood.
Why don't you take the mic out, sir? Hold it. There you go.
Robert Wood. I'm an architect living in Lakeview Terrace and have for 30 years, and I hope to live there the rest of my life. Members of the board, you are in the position to reduce existing blight by running your new rails next to an existing rail line and putting both rail lines below grade. You can also cause new blight if you run your rails where none currently exist. I ask you to improve our cities, not destroy them. If you truly believe that high-speed rail will be a benefit to the communities along its paths, then you should run the high-speed rail along existing railroads and freeways so that additional stations can be added in the future should those communities desire direct access to high-speed rail. You will never find future passengers in a 20-mile tunnel below the National Forest. Construction is always disruptive, but when it's complete, the cities along its paths can have more usable space due to the elimination of the existing railroad. I wish to remind you that the people here are only the tip of the iceberg. If the planning of the route between Burbank and Anaheim is handled in the same manner, you will be actively opposed by millions of people. The voters of this state created the high-speed rail, and they can also kill it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I made it. Good afternoon, board members. My name is George Gamble, and my wife and I are residents of Shadow Hills, and we've been riding our horses in the local area mountains for over 20 years, and in so doing, we have come to realize the value and importance of the area's ponds and springs. They provide a vital lifeline for area, flora, and fauna, among other things. Now, my wife's a water scientist, and she has sent me here to discuss a very specific, if not too sexy, topic, and that is the potential for deep tunnel water leakage and its impact on vital water resources such as these ponds and springs. Deep tunnels, by the way, as they all are, for the recommended routes through these very sensitive mountains. Now, my research indicates that there are a lot of these deep tunnels around the country and around the world, to my surprise, but I'm not surprised to learn that they all have one thing in common, and that is they leak. So I am here to request that this board call for an independent, third-party environmental impact study to determine the impact of tunnel water leakage on sensitive water resources in the area. And further, I am requesting that no proposed route be considered or finalized until that study is finalized. And I thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Corwin from Sunland, Tahunga. I'm talking about your future ridership, and I'm going in the past for just a moment. 8 years ago, I went to the doctor because of severe pain in the center of my chest, thinking heart attack. The diagnosis was asthma. I went to 2 different doctors. Both of them recommended that I live at least 1/2 mile away from freeways. I have allergic asthma. I have an inhaler in my purse, which I rarely have to use because I manage the asthma. Valley fever, construction regrading in the mountains, and that's in your SAA report, indicates that the mountains that are not going to be touched on the outside will have regrading, okay? You're going to be transferring soil, and it will disturb the spores. Avoid activities involving dust, airborne dirt, or native desert soil. That is what is recommended. Obviously, construction's not going to avoid that. Stay out of blowing dust. We have Santa Ana winds, if you're not aware of that. Pets, as well as horses, as well as wild animals, are also susceptible to valley fever and to asthma. So when a pet has the animal equivalent of asthma, allergic triggers in the environment cause its airways to constrict. Horses will usually get pneumonia. HSR advocates tout the project's ability to reduce asthma. However, the studies show it will take anywhere from 30 to 70 years for the air quality benefits to outweigh the construction. But if you have tunnels anywhere, your ridership is going to be the adults of the children now who have asthma and breathing difficulties due to the construction. Are you going to be posting signs that this project in this highly populated area can be extremely dangerous to you, your children's, and your animals' health? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Olivia Hernandez. I'm a 20-year resident of Cagle Canyon. And the first thing that comes to mind is, why did I vote for Jerry Brown? And what was I thinking? And what is he thinking, allowing or coming up with this expensive, outrageous project when we need water? We should be spending our money with water, how to pipe water in from the East Coast or something. But one of the things I wanted to clarify is I'm also a member of the Crescenta Valley Group, Sierra Club. And we represent Tahunga, La Crescenta, Montrose, and La Cañada Flint Ridge. And everyone I've talked to is against the high-speed rail coming through the Angeles Forest Mountains. I'll probably have tomatoes hit at my head when I say you can replace a house, but you cannot replace a mountain range. Once that mountain is compromised, it sets a precedence. Already, we have this fight going on. Crescenta Valley Group is fighting this housing development that's infringing along the Big Tahunga Wash. And they want to build 400 houses, now it's down to 200. But it's this constant infringement and wanting to just get closer and closer to just annihilating these mountains to the point where they just won't exist anymore. And without these mountains, we wouldn't have what we have here. It wouldn't have the big draw that it does for all of us. We all enjoy these mountains and everything that they produce being in them, and we just really need to work on saving them. So for the record, I would like to clarify that there is a great deal of controversy among Sierra Club members here in Angeles regarding the HSR. The majority just do not agree with this high-speed rail. And the ones that do is just the executive committee of the Angeles Forest, because I went to the Angeles chapter banquet and spoke to many people, and it had nothing to do with the executive committee. The executive committee has a political stand on supporting. The transportation committee of the Angeles chapter is the one that's promoting the HSR and who supports it. The Sierra Club members themselves do not support HSR. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I didn't. Sure. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Palmer, and I'm representing Shadow Hills today, and I have lived in the foothills for the last 20 years. To start off with, I voted for HSR. As an initiative, the sad part of it is it was really high on polish and low on content. And I think that it is only fair that we have an opportunity to readdress that, because it is certainly diverged a long way from what we thought we were voting for. And I think you all might notice we're nearing the end here. This group has been very high on nays. Haven't heard a lot of yays, so I don't know where the yays are. But it's wonderful that we are all getting out here and expressing how we really feel. I implore you to remove the ER corridor from the HSR. The E1 and E3 are no better, but please get rid of the E2. This is a very, very special recreation area along the foothills in the Big Tahunga Wash, and it's not just for us in the foothills. Many, many Angelinos come there to recreate either with bikes or hiking or horses. And as for Shadow Hills, these are small ranches that are zoned to be in Shadow Hills, and if somebody were to take their house, you can get a house somewhere else, but you just can't walk next door and get horse property. Extremely unique, special area. I'd also like to say to all of you, it might be nice at some point if you could all get out of your chairs, come up there, take a horse ride through the Big Tahunga Wash. You will find it to be an experience that you'll say, how could this possibly ever go away in the city of Los Angeles? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Laganza Reynolds. I was born in Sun Valley. I was raised in Pacoima. I've owned a house in Cagle Canyon for the last 25 years. I shop in Silmar. I shop in San Fernando. My favorite sushi restaurant is in Sunland, Tahunga. And I have to drive through Shadow Hills to get to work in Burbank every day. One voice. It's ironic to me to actually be here because from 2002 to 2013, I actually commuted between the Bay Area and Los Angeles every week for 12 years. Monday morning, Southwest, Bay Area. Friday night, Southwest, Los Angeles. So in 2008, when I saw the high-speed rail on the ballot, I thought, awesome, this thing is going to go straight down the 5 freeway. I don't know why I thought that, but it was going to go straight down the 5 freeway, which is already divided communities. And I thought, great, this is super. And I voted yes. Imagine my surprise to come back home to Los Angeles last year to find out that, oh, wait, it's actually going to be a tunnel a half mile behind my house at 3,000 feet in the Angeles forest. That's not really what I came here to say today. From 1987 to 1996, I had the honor to be the chief deputy to the 39th Assembly District. One of the most important programs initiated during that time was the California Condor Conservation Project. Between 1988 and 1996, the state of California wisely undertook one of the most expensive species conservation projects in the state history, costing over $35 million. The federal government is still spending $5 million a year on protecting condor habitat. In 1987, the entire world population was 27 condors, all in captivity. In 2014, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimated 425 free-flying birds in the wild. 66 of those condors are in Southern California, and I bet you didn't know this, some of those flying birds are over Cagle Mountain. Cagle Mountain established condor habitat is directly in the path of the E1A high-speed train corridor. No doubt your engineers will advise you that the underground train will be imperceptible to the condors. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But the public perception, however, will be, what a train wreck. The most expensive engineering project in state history is poised to destroy the most expensive conservation project in state history. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Paul. I've lived in Cagle Canyon for 45 years. This morning you heard a lot about people and communities, but we need to think about both people and the land has no voice. This is the latest version of the Rim of the Valley Corridor Resource Study and Environmental Assessment from the National Park Service under the Department of Interior. This is a beautiful book. It provides studies of biological resources, biodiversity, watersheds, aquifers, endangered species of animal and plant life. The Rim of the Valley Corridor will provide educational programs and recreational opportunities for people with little access to parks. It will conserve wildlife and plants and provide corridors for animals and trails for people in the San Gabriel foothills. The study covered over 700,000 acres, and it would affect the 5 million people who live in the study, as well as 13 million in surrounding areas. The San Gabriels, which are some of the fastest growing mountains in the world, contain rocks that are over 1 billion years old. They also contain, as you know, numerous fault systems, including the San Fernando Fault responsible for the 1971 earthquake, which moved these mountains 3 feet. Destroying the rim of the valley corridor with construction, noise, traffic, and air pollution means ignoring millions of people who live in the Los Angeles area. Please remember that all that is under the land affects what is above it. The water alone in the San Gabriel Mountains provides a life source for people, for plants, for animals. These mountains are our legacy. Please do not tunnel under them. I donate this book to anyone who would like to read it.
Why don't you give it to our staff there? Thank you.
My name is Nikki Otten, and I'm a resident of Shadow Hills. I am also on the Shadow Hills Property Owners Association Equestrian and Trails Committee, as well as Vice President of ETI Corral 20. ETI is Equestrian Trails Incorporated, which is a group that was founded in 1944 in California that is dedicated to the acquisition and preservation of trails. Trails are what we're going to lose here. We're going to lose recreation areas. In Shadow Hills, we have approximately 10 or 12 ranches that are boarding facilities where hundreds of horses are housed, and they are not just from the residents of Shadow Hills. They are from the residents of Los Angeles. They are for people who don't have a place to keep their horse at home. If the E2 route goes through and a bridge is put over the Tujunga Wash, which is our main riding area, the people will not have a safe place to ride their horses. One of the tunnel that would enter into Shadow Hills would be at one of the 2 main crossing areas into the Tujunga Wash. So horses would have to ride into the trails under the bridge with a train flying by, and as was spoken to earlier, that's not a good mix. The boarders will eventually leave. The ranches will lose their business. They will close down. When the ranches close down, the feed and tack stores will not have the business. They will leave. They will close down. The residents will not have places to shop for feed and tack. They will have to find places to go because there's not very many options for horse keeping in the city of Los Angeles. It's not like we can just move down the street. There's no place else to go. We would have to leave further and further and further out. So we just would really, really appreciate if you consider the economic effect as well as the lifestyle effect that you are going to have on all these hundreds of people, and not just the residents of Shadow Hills, just not the residents of Lakeview Terrace, Cagle Canyon, and all the other equestrian communities, but also residents of the city of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gabriela Quintero. I grew up in LA. I live in Shadow Hills. I work in Burbank. When you move to the valley, you are seeking a better quality of life for your kids and your family. In Burbank, we hear how our family, friends, and coworkers are being affected by the proposed HSR routes. I have read in several LA Times articles that it has been mentioned that it will be one of the most ambitious tunneling projects in the world, as well that it is projected to have the lowest fare in the world, but at what cost? Do not underestimate Burbank. It is my opinion that as more public awareness builds, you will see that Burbank feels that it is a gross misuse of taxpayers' money, a reckless destruction of our environment, and that there is no public approval. And just wait as more residents realize that there is a Superfund site. You will see that Burbank will say to get rid of all your proposed routes, that to go through Burbank, you need to find alternative routes that go to LA and bypass Burbank. Thank you.
Julia Tarnowski from Sunland Tahunga, specifically Shadow Hills, raising horses since 1974 in the area. Water, the life force. All creatures, great and small, have chosen our areas because the Hanson Dam Recreation and Park area, the Tahunga Wash, Big Tahunga Canyon, Latuna Canyon, the Angeles National Forest all provide streams, ponds, waterfalls, safe havens for our California condors, golden eagles, red-tailed hawks, and the wonderful egrets and herons and songbirds which flourish in these wildlife corridors and scenic, pristine areas. From the tiny field mice, yes, rats, squirrels, skunk, cougar, raccoon, all will not survive well when you start bulldozing above or below ground, signaling the deer and others to move on. But to where? From Tehachapi to Sand Canyon, Pacoima to Sunland Tahunga. People come to and live near these wonderful areas to swim and play, to hike and ride their bikes or horses, to see and feel the wonders of their communities, their small towns, their farms and ranches. Bulldozing under or over these environments, which we have all loved and protected from developers and people like you, will ruin, never ever to be the same again. One question: are you just completely uncaring? Please consider water, water, water. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dave DePinto. I'm president of Shadow Hills Property Owners Association, longtime resident of the area. And I just think the testimony you've heard today from all the various communities is quite poignant. And I hope you've gotten a real good amount of information that can really help you steer a strategic course here. We don't think the project teams, and we think the way you're structured right now with a Burbank to Palmdale and then Burbank to Los Angeles gives you the flexibility and the latitude, or doesn't give staff the latitude to study other options that are out there. One of the things we don't do in our community is beat a dead horse, and I think you've heard a lot of really strong testimony today from our community about the specifics of E1, E2, E3, and also SR 14. I would really like to challenge the authority to look again at this issue of being stuck in Burbank and not having a no Burbank alternative within your study field. We think it's flawed. We were one of the first to challenge this back at a working group meeting several months ago, and at first we were told that it is in the legislation. Then we were told it wasn't, and I've gotten a detailed explanation from Mr. Richard on this, and I just feel like we're touching a real nerve, a soft spot with you, or an anxious spot with you whenever we bring this up. But I do think it should be studied. I think we have to stop overlooking that it's a Superfund site. I think we have to stop overlooking the damage to the San Fernando corridor that results from Burbank being effectively forced in as a station. I think we have to stop overlooking the issue of trespassing into the National Monument and National Forest to get there. These seem like fatal flaws to many of us. So we would ask that, given the scope and cost of this project, that we have other clear alternatives beyond what we're looking at right now. We think you've gotten very strong arguments about SR 14 and E2 today. E1 and E3 are a little bit newer, and as we learn more about those, you can count on us giving you as much information to cancel those as well. So I appreciate you considering that, and I really thank everybody in the communities here who have come out today. And Ms. Perez Essalon, thank you for the tour you came on with us, and Dan, also thank you for the time you spent with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly Decker, proud to be here representing Cagle Canyon. In February, it was my honor. I'm not going to cry. In February, it was my honor to take Chairman Dan Richard on a tour of Cagle Canyon. We followed our meandering creek. We admired the majestic California live oak trees that grow out of its bank. Chairman Richard stood behind me on Little T, where the city becomes the Angeles National Forest and where the only sounds that we could hear were the call of the songbirds and the rushing of Gold Creek. I pointed out the irreversible impacts that the train would have on our national forest, and I felt that in your heart, and I know that you have one, I saw it that day, I felt that you got it. And yet today, 3 Eastern Corridor routes are still on the table. Each of those routes severs perpetual year-round springs in the San Gabriel Mountains. In this time of epic drought, when our governor has called for mandatory water restrictions and claims that every drop counts, it is unconscionable that high-speed rail would continue to insist on forcing through these routes that threaten the natural springs that provide critical drinking water to Los Angeles. Also, every resident of Upper Cagle relies on a well for water, and your E1 route tunnels less than a half a mile from our homes. Your engineers have told us that if their tunneling accidentally dewaters our aquifer, well, they'll mitigate that damage. Destruction of our water supply cannot be mitigated. Water isn't just a foothills community issue. Water isn't just an equestrian issue. Water is everyone's issue. Please, you have the power, and I beg of you, save our future, save our water, eliminate the routes through the National Forest. Thank you.
Pretty tough to follow. My name is Simon Sheeline. I live in Upper Cagle Canyon, and I do get my water from a well. And I am really worried about the effects of tunneling on our well. But I wanted to talk about that I did vote for the high-speed rail. And I think like a lot of people, and most of the people that I talk to who are for it, I just sort of imagine getting on a train, maybe going to a Dodger or Giant game. We're going to zip up the 5, across the valley. We're going to be there in a couple hours. It's going to be great. And then when I heard it was going to Bakersfield and Palmdale, and if you talk to people and you tell them that it's going to go to Palmdale, most people aren't very excited about that that live in Los Angeles. I mean, I really haven't met anybody that is. So I'm not for any of these tunneling routes. I think you should stick with what was in the original bill, which I believe it said existing corridors, transportation corridors, which would mean the 14, unfortunately. But I have a kind of a different viewpoint on the whole thing. I think you should just kind of give up this whole super fast train from Palmdale to Burbank and probably through all of LA. Fix the tracks that are there, make the trains work so maybe you can go 100 miles an hour, not 200 miles an hour. And there is a precedent for this, as I understand it, in the San Francisco Bay area, in the Silicon Valley, you have made this concession to slow down the train through their area. We're not millionaires or billionaires with super high-tech companies. We are people that, you know, could, I don't know what to say. Thanks. Thanks, sir.
Hi, my name is Sam Edgman from Cagle Canyon. Thank you for having us, Mr. Chairman and board. Everything has been said here. The one thing that strikes me interesting is that I've talked to several of my friends about this whole idea and this whole project, and the most of the people I talk to have the same feeling, is that, well, this is going to happen. It's already been talked about. It's already been voted on. It's already in action. It's going to happen. Well, it hasn't happened yet. No tracks are on the ground. No trains are running. It doesn't have to happen. We've spent millions of dollars already on getting this thing off the ground, but we're looking at spending $60, $70 billion to make it happen. If we had to spend $1 billion right now to pay off the contractors, to consult everything and have it go away, we would be ahead of the game. Because in the long run, you're going to spend 70 or 80 million, maybe a billion, or maybe 100 billion. And who's going to benefit from it? I mean, the people that are complaining about their neighborhoods and where they're going, any of them are benefiting from it. It's going to benefit a few people. It's going to benefit the contractors, the people that are building it. They're the ones that are going to be making millions and billions of dollars off of this. But it's not doing anything for the local people in our little communities. They talk about don't put it down the 14, don't put it down E1, E2, or E3. Go underground from Palmdale to Burbank. Does anybody have any idea what they're talking about to build a tunnel underground from Palmdale to Burbank? It's almost impossible. And what you're going to do to the land, you're going to destroy so many things. The train should go underground, but not through a tunnel. It should go into a grave and go away.
Good afternoon. My name is Don Delson. My wife Kathy and I are refugees from Pasadena. We've lived in Shadow Hills for 25 years. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, of all the things you will do in your long and productive lives, the decisions you make serving on this board may have the greatest impact. You have an unparalleled opportunity to shape the future of our great state. At the same time, you have a heavy burden. And while some may take issue with how you do your job, I can't imagine that any right-minded person would want to fill your shoes. That is, after witnessing what transpired today. So I'd like to thank you for your service. As you evaluate the various choices in front of you, I ask that you consider the following questions. Am I carrying out the will of the people as expressed in the original ballot initiative? Do I have the first-hand information I need to make informed decisions? Am I being unbiased and considering all viable options? Do I have the time I need to consider all possibilities? And finally, am I able to make decisions without interference and undue pressure from others? If you cannot answer yes to these 5 questions, I would suggest that you take a time out before moving ahead. A delay today is better than living with the consequences of an ill-informed decision for the rest of our lives. Thank you for listening.
I'm Elizabeth Harner, and I'm from Shadow Hills.
Why don't you?
Can you hear me now? I'm Elizabeth Harner, and I live in Shadow Hills. I have wanted to live there for the last 60 years, and I finally could afford to move there, and I did 4 years ago, and I love it. The E2 will be going underneath my house as planned. And I will tell you my bottom line first, because I don't want to get cut off. I'm here to oppose the E2 option and all other options as well. And I'm not going to reiterate everything that everyone else has said, because it's all been said. I think it comes down to priorities, gentlemen and ladies. In this state, we don't have an unlimited number of resources, either our mountains, our finances. We just don't have it. And it seems like politicians seem to think we do, but we don't. And we were told at one of the meetings that we're going to have 12 million new residents in the state shortly, and that we have to plan for them, so we have to build this railroad for them. And I just was thinking, well, how are we going to afford all of this money? You know, there's only so much, a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. And we only have so many dollars. We're going to have to think about how to spend it. Now, number one in this state right now is water. We need to start spending some money on our water. And the new member to the board, the gentleman at the end, I think his name is Curtin. That would be you. I think you need to talk to your staff about dismissing our concerns about water. All we hear about is, you're going to mitigate this, don't worry about it, honey, it's just fine. Well, it isn't just fine, and it's not going to go away. We should have taken care of it a long time ago, but now we need to address it. And obviously the EPA is a little concerned. They just passed a law. They're going to regulate our streams all across this country and control them. They're going to protect them. Now, I think if they think it's important enough to protect them, perhaps we should be concerned as well. And I'm not going to go into all of the rest of it, but please don't destroy our homes and our livelihood. And by the way, that equestrian community does account for a pretty good chunk of the economy. If anybody, I think, David, you could speak to that. You were talking about how much money is there. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cindy Cleghorn, and I represent Sunland Tujunga. I serve on the Sunland Tujunga Neighborhood Council. I'm an elected board member. I'm also the immediate past president of the Chamber of Commerce. First of all, though, I wanted to make a point. I don't think you can get into Burbank. The Superfund site is so contaminated that they, when I was in Burbank, wouldn't allow them to build any lower than 10 feet. So something for you to be aware of, and I just don't think that it's possible to get to Burbank. The Sunland Tujunga Neighborhood Council took a position in September opposing the Angeles Forest route. The Sunland Tujunga community loses. There are absolutely no community benefits to the HSR cutting through our communities. Sunland Tujunga has a population of 70,000. We just recently lost a really great economic opportunity for the area, and the city lost it too. And the future of the community and our children. It was a business that would have brought education, it would have brought vibrant retail, and they pulled out knowing that the HSR was coming through either the E2 or the E3 areas. And finally, I wanted to point out the station fire that we suffered back in 2009. We learned that we have a very unique terrain. That fire jumped, hopped, and we had a lot of difficulty getting services during that time period. So it's there's a lot that is different about our terrain, and Mother Nature is in charge. Don't mess with Mother Nature. Thank you.
Good afternoon, esteemed board members. My name is Shannon McGinnis, and I'm very grateful to be a resident of Cagle Canyon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak publicly about our concerns today. This is the first time we've been allowed to participate in this kind of forum, and we do appreciate it. At one of your high-speed rail meetings, one of the representatives commented that the E1 route looks the most promising because it will have the least impact. This is troubling to me. Not only because it does not follow established transportation corridors as proposed to the voters, but also because it poses a potentially significant environmental threat to the aquifer that supplies the wells of Cagle Canyon and the headwaters of the LA River. How can you justify considering a route that would threaten something so necessary to life? How can you justify draining the groundwater to drill a tunnel during a drought? It seems irresponsible and poorly planned. High-speed rail officials have said they will mitigate if the aquifer is damaged or destroyed by their tunneling. How can you mitigate a damaged water source? Some things can be rebuilt if they're sacrificed by your building. An aquifer cannot be rebuilt. I have been attending meetings, writing letters, making phone calls for a year now in order to alert the powers that be of this threat, but I have yet to be acknowledged. In fact, the realignment of the new E1 route is twice as close to our wells as the old E1 route. So here I am today. I've sacrificed a day's pay to be here in the hopes of finally being heard and having all the eastern routes, and the E1 in particular, removed from consideration. Taxpayer dollars should be spent protecting our precious resources, not destroying them. Full disclosure, I did vote for the high-speed rail. I thought it was a great idea in the beginning. If I had a second chance, I would now vote for water, not rail. Why? Because without water, our homes are worthless. On a side note, you may not be aware of it, but there were a couple hundred stakeholders that were outside this hall today because they were not provided seats. The video feed we've been watching kept breaking up in the audience. The audio was so echoey, it was difficult to clearly hear what was being said. If this is an example of what you think is acceptable, then it's even more challenging to have faith in your ability to safely and efficiently build high-speed rail. I have faith you can do better. Please go back to the drawing board, listen to the people. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Susie Moat, and I've lived in Cagle Canyon almost all of my life. In my heart of hearts, I really don't want the HSR at all until we have our water problem solved. We are in an epic drought. Where will the water come from to drill through the mountains or under Acton? HSR should be on hold until the drought is over. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for hearing us. My name is Pat Romar, and I am from Lakeview Terrace now, but I have lived in Acton, and I lived in Sand Canyon. I, too, am pro-union, and I am for jobs that pay a good living wage. But 22 years ago, I moved to Lakeview Terrace with multiple critters: horses, chickens, ducks, and geese. High-speed rail will devastate the environment that I've worked hard to help maintain for all of us who cherish our rural way of life. We did not vote for tunnels through the National Forest. I feel HSR needs to be put on layaway, at least. If water and bursting pipes are not a priority for our state, we are all truly doomed. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Clark Schickler, 14-year resident of Lakeview Terrace. In the military, when priorities change, the mission changes. And California's severe drought threatens our survivability, so the mission has to change. We have to prioritize water. All the money for high-speed rail needs to be repurposed until we get the water issues resolved. Otherwise, there's no justification that growth that justifies high-speed rail can't actually occur. So it's all been said before, but this whole thing should be put on hold or canceled.
My name is Joe Adams. I want to just say that my empathy for the other communities and how they're affected by this project has gone off the charts. And I'd like to give special acknowledgement to our president, Dave DePinto, who got me and so many people involved. I'm approximately a 50-year resident of Sunland, Tahunga, and Shadow Hills. I had to retire so that I could attend this meeting today, just a few days ago. But I attended Mount Gleason, I went to Verdugo Hills and Glendale College, as well as our local institutions. And I just wanted to say that in the time that I've been here, and I'm sure I can get verification, I've witnessed some at least 4 or 5 floods, some 300 or 400 yards wide, that would equal anything you've seen on TV as a national disaster. Earthquakes, of course, we've had. But Mother Nature has a way of ravaging the grounds and communities, and we all know that. Well, guess what? This project plans to cross that very wash where these floods occur. And I'm going to bet on Mother Nature every time versus the construction promises of engineers who have never met her. And can you imagine those trestles being blown over and even a tunnel and the horrors that might be there. And I would just challenge each of you who have this decision-making process. Do you want any of those hazards and horrors on your conscience? Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank the very patient citizens of the foothill communities of Shadow Hills, Cagle Canyon, Sunland, Tahunga, and Lakeview Terrace for coming here today. Next on our list is the community of the city of Burbank. Are there people who wish to speak who are residents or representatives from the city of Burbank at this point? All right. We do have other speakers. Mr. Scott, did you and Ms. Andranagian fill out cards? All right. Do you have cards, though, that you can hand in? Okay. So these are residents from Kings County. I'm sorry, Fresno, Kings, and Kern counties. So even though that's not the alignments that we're looking at today, we'll take them as a group, and then I'll go through the individual cards we have remaining. I know that many of these people, especially from the labor organizations, aren't here, but these are the remaining speaker cards after the folks from the Central Valley. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Elisa Gomez. I am from Corcoran, California. I've given up a day of work. I gave up an evening with my kids last night, and we've drove 3 hours here, so I'd appreciate your undivided attention. I wanted to talk about the issue that we're having with resolution of necessities in our area. I have a neighbor that's 82 years old. She's been in her house for 63 years. I've lived in Corcoran and worked in Corcoran for 15 years and have watched her work with the school system, and she is a very healthy lady. And through this process, she has been in and out of the hospital. She's giving up on this fight because of her health. She was working with the high-speed rail, and then she was issued this resolution of necessity. And I don't understand why she was issued this if she was working with them, because the resolution of necessity puts us into eminent domain, and that is if someone is not working with us. What she was told was, it's just a process we have to go through. Then I have another neighbor that has gone through all the steps. They've been working with the high-speed rail. They built their house, and so they have data. They know what it costs. And they have shared that with the high-speed rail. They have realized that the offer that they were getting is a smack in the face, and so they have been wronged as well. The reason? Because you're not working with us. No, they're working with you. They're just not giving in to you. There's a difference. A resolution of necessity, why do we need this if we are truly working with you? We are in CP2 and CP3. There is CP1 right before us that is 75 miles away. And none of that property, or not all of that property is acquired yet. Why are we not working on that? Why is there a necessity to have our property? You need to spend your time, your money, and your effort on getting this project sound and right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Richard, CEO Morales, and members of the board. And welcome, Mr. Curtin. 2 decades ago, my name is Shelley Andranagian, and I was born and raised in Fresno County, and I'm a member of the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. 2 decades ago, I had no idea I would be on the front lines to keep the American version of a fast train in California accountable, on a straight track, and not the diagonal one that runs through the middle of our farming operations in the San Joaquin Valley, an area surrounded by equally productive California farmland and the rails pathway that feed and clothe the world. It will be 20 years this coming July 2015, next month, that I first traveled via high-speed rail. There was a group of us that rode the rails from Paris, France to Barcelona, Spain via the TGV. My main mode of transportation was primarily via train during the few weeks of my only trip to Europe. While there, I also took the much-lauded and brand-new Eurostar, which traversed the channel from France to England. I remember a long delay while in the channel section, both to and from my destinations. Granted, I don't know those individuals who were mistreated during the building of the fast trains across Europe. I just knew I was excited, as was my dad, who also loved and preferred train travel, to be able to ride the brand-new Eurostar to visit a college classmate. That same level of excitement has existed in recent years among train enthusiasts of all ages the world over because of the California High-Speed Rail Project, which touts the promise of unsubsidized fast travel, 2 hours and 40 minutes between the downtowns of 2 major American cities known the world over, San Francisco and Los Angeles. Those with the California High-Speed Rail Authority and their followers continue to operate with the idea of build it and they will come. Or more simply put, dig the hole deep enough and their only alternative is to fill it. However, the plan to build remains flawed while many businesses, farms, and homes in the pathway are being railroaded, pun intended, during the process. Once again, we are discussing and voting on issues impacting farmers in the San Joaquin Valley, while here in Los Angeles County. The same was done last September in Palmdale regarding Fresno County farms. Agenda Item 8 concerns the Williamson Act, where you have parcels in Kings, Kern, and Tulare counties. The Williamson Act was also on the agenda this past February, along with last August and November in Sacramento County. Why is this not being discussed closer to home, especially during harvest season? Move this agenda item discussion closer to home in August when you meet next. There have been no monthly board meetings in the Central Valley since May 2014. I have 3 more paragraphs, and I can cut it to the last one because this will be entered in the public record. It's totally up to you.
Well, Ms. Andronigian, can I ask you to just submit that for the record? I just want to be fair to all the people who waited
I have
today.
one closing statement, though, and I'll skip the 2 big paragraphs. As a native Californian, I kindly ask each of you to reevaluate the path and methods being taken to build the largest infrastructure project of its type in the world, a project that will remain flawed without those in the pathway being included in the process. I want the youngest members of our family, Generation Z, to be able to safely traverse this golden state in the same manner I was able to travel Europe a generation ago. Thank you and safe travels.
Thank you, Ms. Andronigian.
Hello, I'm Sherilyn Smith from Fresno, and what I'm noticing today is that what happens in Fresno doesn't necessarily stay in Fresno. What I'm seeing, for example, is people concerned about eminent domain, and I am concerned that we are ground zero in Fresno. We're the beginning of what you call construction, which really is kind of questionable at this point in time, and certainly this project is not a done deal. But to say what I had to say, that the eminent domain claims are rampant in Fresno at this point. You acquire just a paltry number of properties compared to what you need, and you're going for eminent domain on the rest. Something like 1/5 have been acquired through negotiations, and eminent domain is the rest. And what I'm seeing is a strong concern for an eminent domain here. You're right to be concerned about eminent domain. It's starting there. What goes around there is going to go around, is going to come down to other areas of the state, down and up the state. And another thing that's negative is I'll mention briefly, you've already breached the EPA with having invaded a breeding ground for kit fox, a very rare breed in Fresno. You are right to be concerned for animals and nature. I'm very proud to hear people speaking up for that early enough. And it has a lot to do with you being released from CEQA, which is far more specific to environmental protection than what the federal government has, more tailored to our needs in California and our desires to keep California what it is. But what I really came here for was to say another thing that goes around. I want to spread myself. The last time I saw you, Mr. Richard, I was at the invitation-only groundbreaking ceremony. Only the supporters and only very high-level supporters were allowed behind those gates for what we call the groundbreaking. It was actually a signing of a rail, not exactly groundbreaking. But I was there, and I was outside the fence carrying my sign that said, "Do not bail high-speed rail." And I was yelling, "Show us the money, Jerry." and other things, which I would like to share with you, but some of them were maybe not unshareable in public. But at any rate.
Could I just ask you to then please conclude?
Yes, what I'm here to say is that at that ceremony, Mr. Richard, you said, we're going to build from Merced to Bakersfield and from Burbank to Palmdale. We're going to do different parts of the state at different times, like little blades of grass that eventually provide a lawn. And I wanted to shout out, Mr. Richard, we don't have water to water our lawns, just like you don't have money to build this thing or a viable financial plan. And
Thank you. Okay. Excuse
you
me.
left the gap of the
I'm sorry, we have
Tehachapi's.
people who want to speak, and you did make a very nice point there. So could I ask you to just let others speak?
Well, I just want to say you left the Tehachapi's and you don't have a way over. Look at the November 18th YouTube video of the public comments, please. I'm asking you to relook at that because that's where you admit it. And that's going to hold us financially hostage to this project.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm leaving something on cap and trade as well.
Great, thank you. Sir.
I'm Bill DeCary, a 41-year resident of Bakersfield. Mr. Chairman and board members, I was disappointed to see item number 9 removed from the agenda late on Friday about the planned safety and security. Since it will come up later, I'd like to take a minute and talk about it. The authority's security plan has been sorely lacking, as revealed in a Los Angeles Times article last December, saying high-speed rail is more traveler-friendly than flying. No long security lines, no stripping off belts and shoes, no pat-downs, no x-rays. I was amazed by the CEO's comments, such as you can't drive a train off a track into a building. It just isn't as attractive a target for terrorists as airplanes. Security is described as cops eyeballing passengers but not screening them. There will be security cameras but no metal detectors, all to save travelers a good half hour. Frankly, I don't see myself getting on a train with a guy who just got on with an unexpected backpack. The vulnerability of trains was demonstrated in 2004 when 4 commuter trains in Madrid were hit in a coordinated attack that killed 191 and wounded 2,000. It is naive to think California's high-speed rail will be immune from terrorist attacks. A reality check comes from the director of USC's Transportation Engineering Program, who points out securing aircraft requires securing only airports. Securing trains requires securing the entire right-of-way, which of course includes bridges and tunnels. In order to have an adequate security plan, it must be acknowledged that high-speed trains are particularly vulnerable to attack. Terrorists choose iconic targets. America's first and only high-speed rail would certainly qualify. In conclusion, I look for a comprehensive security and safety discussion in the upcoming 2016 business plan, and trust there will be a budget line item for a passenger and right-of-way security system. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott, before you start, let me just say that item was simply postponed from today's agenda due to the fact that the agenda today was going to be dominated by this issue, so it's going to be taken back up at a future high-speed rail board meeting. Mr. Scott,
Thank
good
you
afternoon.
very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, deja vu. Deja vu. June 2011, board meeting, Sacramento. Same thing. Everything that has been said here today, and I believe there's been over about 300 people that have spoken today, and guess what? 4 years later, to the month, not the day, but to the month, I'm hearing the same thing. So the first thing that comes to mind is after reading the Prop 1A proposition again 3 days ago, I discovered something. The unintended consequences. The unintended consequences are, stop it now, you're done. And I reference a video of 2008, October, when Mr. Frank Varanich, I believe it is, he was the ex-CEO of this high-speed rail. In 2008, his last comment was, dissolve the authority now. 8 years ago, 2008, he said that. I'm saying that right now. You don't have the money, you don't have the water, you don't have anything. And by the way, we would have water today if the leadership was wrong. 8 years ago, 2008, this thing was voted on. We haven't got a bit of ground going anywhere. This needs to stop. It needs to go back to square one. It needs to go back to the voters. This is a travesty of the state of California. Bottom line is, irresponsibility is rolling over everybody. And the other thing that really bothers me is that no one will answer the question about money. And by the way, I was at a meeting in Fresno, Tuttaparini high-speed rail, and I asked 3 engineers some questions. Then I went out and asked a manager some questions, and guess what I got? Different answers. Who's on first? You, them, or me? I'm sorry. I'm done. Thank you very much.
My name is Frank Oliveira. I'm with the Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability. I've been involved with this project for 5 years, as some of you know. I believe that that makes me involved with this project longer than everybody that's on the dais today. I've watched this project evolve. You've taken a lot of criticism today for not listening. You've taken criticism for not listening in the press. I believe that is wrong. I believe you do listen. I believe you listen, but you do not consider what's being told to you. What I've heard today expressed down here in Los Angeles are the same complaints which have been expressed to you for 5 years up north. Apparently nothing's changed. You check off a box, you can listen, but you don't consider what people are telling you. Planning. What most people in this room do not understand is that you make the plan, you review the plan, you approve the plan. And if the plan has a problem, then it's an acceptable risk or an acceptable loss. That, if you look at the EIR from up north, you can see it. Compensation. Eventually, everybody will get to the point that we are down in Kings County, in Fresno County, in Kern County, where your properties will be inventoried. Our houses, our homes, our ranches, our farms, our schools, our churches, our communities are just inventory in the way. Inventory for you to acquire, and that's all they are. We are being offered 25% compensation for our properties that are moving into, well, I guess eminent domain as we move into the resolutions of necessity. I see some shaking of heads. I've got my offer. I know how much my property is worth. To end this, because I want to respect everybody's time, simply, people in this room should consult the FRA and have them involved, because you've already declared that you're not upholding to CEQA. People should hold their politicians accountable for the decisions that they've made to get us to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver. Okay, to complete the public comment portion of the agenda, I have these remaining cards. I fear that most of these folks have left, but I'll call out names. Ron Miller, LA Building Trades. Patrick Kelly from Teamsters Union. David Gomez, IBW. Kevin Morton. Mike Kufchak, also from IBW. Joe Sullivan. Saul Renteria. Dan Billy. Walter Carroll, Machinists. Steve Van Wee, Machinists. Rudy Gonzalez. Daniel Mung. Camille Saltzman. Keith Dunn. Kevin Kuchera. David Cameron. Mr. Cameron, I think I see you're here. And Mr. Cameron, you are today's last speaker.
I consider that a privilege. My name is David Cameron, and I'm with the Teamsters Rail Conference, and I want to commend the board and your staff for an excellent series of community house meetings. I've been involved in this kind of stuff for several decades, and I don't think I've ever seen such a detailed, thorough presentation of the impacts of the alternate routes down to the individual house. Your staff, I thought, has been unfailingly polite, often in the face of overt hostility, and they have been unbiased, and I feel have been telling the unvarnished truth about the impacts of this project. And for those of you here today who have stood here and expressed your concerns, I want you to know I know many of the people on this board, and your concerns have been heard, and they will be taken into consideration as they move forward in this process, and it's very important to the process. And also, let's remember, we're just in the beginning of this.
Mr. Cameron, I need you to address the board and not the public.
But in the final analysis, let us not forget that the roads that we travel today, the bridges that we cross, the railroads that deliver our goods, the airports that bring us to distant destinations were built by our fathers and our forefathers in large measure. We have one of the best transportation systems in the world, largely due to their foresight, but we are falling behind. We are choking from congestion, and that will only get worse. We are building high-speed rail today, not for us alone, but for our children and their children and our children. We are building it, and this is a solemn duty that we owe to them. Hundreds of people have spoken here today for the project and against the project, but it pales in comparison to the thousands of people who protested the building of the Golden Gate Bridge. But does anyone look at that engineering marvel today and not wonder and wish it weren't there? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. You do not have the distinction of being the last speaker because we just got one last speaker card, and that's it. You know, I've been very patient with people. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to speak, and I'd ask people to just be polite when people with other views speak. Caitlin Winklebank.
Thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak today. I'm going to start with a quote from Ted Rall from the LA Times, something that came out in January this year. Mass transit creates economic opportunity where none are previously existed. I used to assume that the planners of New York City's subway system placed stations at major streets. In fact, areas around subways became hubs of business activity because the subway was there. Not only will business boom because of the high-speed rail, but it will give an estimated of 6,600,000 high-speed rail employees, 200,000 construction jobs, and up to 400,000 long-term jobs. High-speed rail will highlight, not destroy, the communities it goes through, and will highlight industry for those who travel by rail, metro, bike, or foot. All voices are being heard today. It doesn't sound like anything has been decided yet, which I'm excited to hear. I encourage all of us to think on a community-minded basis and to encourage other communities to bring forth more ideas, more resolutions for this to come. Right now in California, we have, excuse me, I'm losing my place. Amtrak's Acela on the East Coast accounts for about 80% of the transit in between New York and DC. High-speed rail will be double that speed and hopefully will be equally, if not more, profitable. The United States needs high-speed rail, and California deserves to be the leader of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all for your commitment to coming here today and speaking. We're going to move on to the rest of our agenda, and I'm going to propose a reordering of the agenda. I think most of the public is here to listen to the discussion about the supplemental alternatives analysis. And so even though it's showing up at the bottom of the agenda. I'm going to move that to the next item.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to thank you for the good job you've done running the meeting, and I want to thank everybody for coming. There's a great deal of emotionalism here. These are critical topics for all of you, but I do appreciate the patience that you've exhibited and everybody in the audience. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. You know, I would just say, you know, we live in a big, complex state, and I've been working on this project for several years, and I think the thing that's been most compelling to me is the number of places in California that I never knew of, like Acton or Shadow Hills, or all these communities that have been represented here today, Pacoima, all of these, and how incredibly committed people are to the communities in which they live. I mean, it is something that is incredibly powerful, and I don't know if it's unique to California, but it certainly makes it a special place. I'm going to ask people the following courtesy. Michelle Boehm, our Southern California regional leader, is about to make a presentation on a supplemental alternatives analysis. As my newest colleague, Mr. Curtin, just said, we know this is a subject where there's a lot of strong feelings and a lot of emotion, and certainly for people who are facing the uncertainty and the possibility of real loss here, I can understand that. She is here to do her job at our behest. She's a professional person, and she's about to make a presentation on a topic that will probably involve issues that will cause concern with some of you. I would just ask people to give her the courtesy of letting her make that presentation, allow us to ask questions of her, and you know, she should not be the target of anybody's emotion. We are the appointed representatives of the leadership of the state. We're the ones making the decisions. As I said, today's not a decision day, but ultimately it is we who are making those decisions. And I really appreciate courtesy shown to our staff who are just doing their job as best they can, and frankly, from our standpoint, doing it extremely well. So, Ms. Boehm, could you lead us through this discussion, please?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, board members, item number 3. This is an information item only. Shown here on the slide, you can see the alignments for the Southern California section of the high-speed rail project. This is not all of the statewide 800-mile planned high-speed rail. This is the portion, the 330-mile portion within the Southern California office's purview. And as has been mentioned in many of the presentations that we've given, there are many reasons why the high-speed rail project is underway in the state of California. We have population growth, we have congestion, we have air quality issues, and we certainly are concerned with our commerce and our economic development as we move forward. High-speed rail is conceived of to connect the state of California in a different way with a new mode than we currently have operating. And it's meant to be part of a multimodal statewide transportation improvement project. And so within Southern California, some of the things that high-speed rail can do, we can close the current passenger rail gap over the Tehachapi's so that we have connectivity to the Central Valley and to Northern California differently than we've had in the past. We can also connect regions within Southern California much more quickly and seamlessly than we have in the past. For instance, you can see on the slide some of the travel times between Southern California locations. We can connect airports within Southern California, something that has been missing in our past transportation plans. And we can also create multimodal transportation hubs at our major station locations, including Palmdale, Burbank, Los Angeles Union Station, and Arctic, to name a few. While we are planning high-speed rail and all of the comments that we had today about the planning of the high-speed rail route. We also have projects underway here in Southern California to make sure that we're improving the existing system while we plan this project. And so in the short term, we have provided funding to LA Metro, to Metrolink, to NCTD, to San Diego, to do projects like enhance the safety on our existing passenger rail system, to install positive train control on the Metrolink system, to purchase new Tier 4 locomotives for our Metrolink system so that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 90%. Those projects are underway now. We are also embarking upon a suite of projects that will improve all of the operations of our regional rail programs here in Southern California, including run-through tracks at LA Union Station, grade separations to improve some of the traffic conditions when trains pass by, as were mentioned earlier, and also improve the overall safety of our traveling public.
Excuse me, through the chair, what's positive train control?
Positive train control is the system that is able to sense where all of the trains are at and how fast the trains are traveling. So if it senses that a train is traveling too quickly, it can slow it down to a safe speed. If it senses that there is another train that is in the way of the traveling train, it can slow both of those trains down so they don't end up running into one another. So it is a safety system much, much needed in Southern California.
And I believe that, thank you, Mr. Correa. This is the system that's being discussed now because it was not in place for the recent Amtrak crash in Pennsylvania.
Yes, that is correct. And LA, the Metrolink system here in LA, I'm pleased to note, is leading the nation in the implementation, and they will bring this online. They will be the first largest system to bring positive train control online, and they're in the process of bringing it online this year. So that's very, very exciting in the country. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, Palmdale to Burbank. The Palmdale to Burbank section, there's a map up here, as has been mentioned, is between 35 and 45 miles long, depending on the route that you measure it on. It is connected by 2 stations in Palmdale and in Burbank. And those station locations were selected because of the connectivity that they offer to the other forms of transportation in the area now and connections to planned transportation improvements in the future. Let's take a look at Palmdale first. Palmdale has a Palmdale Transportation Center right now. It is served by Metrolink, and there is a station. In the future, there is planning by other agencies to bring high-speed rail potentially from Las Vegas all the way into Southern California, and that would be the location that our system and that plan system could meet in order to provide the traveling public not only north-south connectivity across the state of California, but also interstate high-speed rail connections. And so those are among the connectivity options at that location. In Burbank, we have an airport, as has been mentioned. We also have 2 passenger rail lines. We have the Ventura line going up all the way to San Luis Obispo and all the way down to San Diego. And we have the Antelope Valley line that goes up through Santa Clarita and into the Antelope Valley. At that juncture of those 2 lines sits that Burbank Airport, and that is the location that we are looking at putting a high-speed rail transportation hub at in order to connect to those major pieces of infrastructure. But as we plan that, of course, we need to look at all modes of transportation. It's not just about the passenger rail. We have to make sure that we're considering the active transportation components, the walking and the biking. We need to make sure that we're considering the bus and make sure that that can connect at that location as well. And in perhaps the future, there are other opportunities that the County of Los Angeles may bring forward for connections that could include an extension of the existing Red Line subway to this location, as well as an extension of the Orange Line BRT to this location. That's why this location really rises to the top as being an excellent location to provide connectivity for travel. I want to talk a little bit, and a few of our speakers mentioned, we talk about this at our meeting, that we have three things, three guiding principles that we work to balance as we build the high-speed rail system. The first one is the project objectives. Those are the things associated with building a train and making sure it can operate safely, that it can operate at over 200 miles per hour, that we're putting stations in locations where we can gather the most riders to the system and create the most connectivity for the existing system. That's what falls under that yellow circle project objectives. Looking at the green circle, those are the environmental resources. We have to protect our mountains and our water and our trees and our animals as we plan this route. And the light blue, of course, at the top, it's the communities, and it's protecting the community character as we plan the system. And we know that it is very, very difficult as we go through this process to really dig in and understand all of the things that we need to understand about the environmental resources and about the community resources, as we also dig into the engineering to make sure that the train is the most amazing high-speed train that we can build. And ultimately, it is the middle section here. It is that compromise area where each of the critical factors are brought together and they're balanced and weighed. That is the ideal project for high-speed rail and the ideal way to connect Palmdale to Burbank. And that's the work that we have started, that we have underway right now, but we are not done. We have made progress, but we are not done. We still have a distance to travel. And here, on this particular flow chart, is the representation basically of where we're at and where we still need to go. And so starting back in 2005, on the top line to the left of the slide, that was when we completed the program level environmental documents for the high-speed rail system, when we defined that it would be an 800-mile railroad for the state of California. And we moved forward. We had scoping meetings to begin the work on each of the sections of the high-speed rail project. And we created planning documents, alternative analyses documents that captured all of the information that we were bringing together to define those routes. And those documents have progressed through time. This project has evolved, and I'll show a slide that demonstrates that in a little bit. And so here today, we have completed another planning document for the Palmdale to Burbank section of the project. We have brought forward many ideas that will help benefit the project moving forward. As I mentioned, we still have work to do, but progress has been made. Moving forward, that progress is made in the environmental process, the development of an environmental document, where we dive deeply into many, many of the technical issues that you've heard the public talk about today in order to make sure that we do get the answers to all of the questions that they've asked. And on this slide, this is the slide where we talk about that. During the alternatives analysis and the preparation of those planning documents, we're doing a high-level review of many of the factors that would drive the selection of an alignment. And as we move forward into the deeper technical studies, and you can see here in the dark blue under the books, a draft and final environmental document, all of the technical studies that will be completed as part of the environmental documentation process. Each of these studies will be completed on each of the routes, and those results then are compared amongst the routes in order for us to ultimately select the preferred route. And you can see up here that those issues that are very, very critical that have been talked about, environmental justice, water resources, seismicity, noise, parks and open space, agriculture and farms, aesthetics, cultural resources, biology, all of those are technical studies that will be concluded on each of the routes in order to determine basically how that route performs in that particular area. And then those results are ultimately compared as we go towards selecting a preferred alternative. So our work has really just begun here. We are nowhere near the end of it. Here on this slide, you can see a recap of the variety of open house meetings, public scoping meetings, and community working group meetings that we've held since May and June of 2014, so just within the last year. We have held over 188 meetings in the last year with a variety of community organizations, elected representatives, to really begin to fully understand each of the communities that we will be traveling through for this particular alignment. And there's more to learn, but we have learned a lot, and what we have learned has driven the evolution of the alignments that we are currently studying today. And here on this slide, you can see the evolution over time of the alignments that we are studying to connect Palmdale to the San Fernando Valley. And in 2010, we looked at and basically proposed through a planning document what is essentially the SR14 alignment that was talked about so poignantly today. And in 2012, we brought forward additional refinements to that SR14 route, as you can see up there, primarily up in the northern area, up here in the Acton area, because it is so critical that we find a path through Acton that is acceptable. And in 2014, basically again, just about last year, we presented to the board the map that you see towards the middle here, where we've made additional refinements in the Santa Clarita area, in the Acton area, and in the San Fernando Valley as well. And then later in 2014, you can see that we have brought on some additional routes for study to give us that opportunity to study a full range of alternatives, not just a single alternative that goes through a single community or a single number of communities, but study additional routes, bringing to bear advancements in tunneling and tunneling technology that have taken place around the globe to minimize the impacts to the communities and to resources. And then in 2015, here today, you can see that again, those routes have evolved based on that combination of the needs of the project, the environmental resources, and the community feedback. And so I'm going to go through a series of slides here. I'm going to be presenting basically some of the information that we have collected over the course of time studying this to help really bring to everybody's attention just how complex this is. So you can see here on this map are the current routes, the 2015 alignments that we are currently studying. You can see that we have 4 alternatives as you come into the San Fernando Valley. And you can see that we have several alternatives also up in the northern part. This particular map, this is showing the terrain. Where it is dark green, those are the peaks of the San Gabriel Mountain. Where it is lighter, obviously, those are the valley. This slide shows us the population density from the Palmdale to San Fernando Valley area, with red being the most dense and green, of course, being the least dense. It also shows us some of the income level in that area. The particular census tracts where there is a lower income level are shown in the black hashed. This particular map is showing the schools, the churches, the health facilities, the recreation facilities along the alignment from the Palmdale to Burbank section. And this particular map is showing you the forest boundaries. You can see in light green the Angeles National Forest. You can see in medium green the new monument, and you can see in dark green special wilderness areas that have been designated within this resource for Southern California. On this map, you can see the wetlands from, again, north to south. You can see where those are located vis-a-vis the alignments. And on this one, you can see the streams. And on this one, you can see the critical habitat, where there are animals of interest to resource agencies. Here you can see the earthquake faults. You can see at the top the San Andreas Fault, and you can see the San Gabriel Fault roughly halfway through the mountain range. And here you can see the natural springs. Here are the water wells, the information that we've been able to obtain to date, and I know that there is information still to be gained here, but this was the information available to us through LA County sources. Here you can see mining activity. These are either current mines or abandoned mines. You can see that over time there has been a lot of activity throughout the Southern California area. And here are forest inholdings. These are areas where there is private ownership within the existing forest boundary. And here you can see all of those layers overlaid on a single map with the routes shown. And so we just would like to draw attention to the fact that there is much to consider as we develop ultimately towards selecting the right route to connect Palmdale and Burbank, but that we are collecting that information, we are studying that information, and we are listening to the public as we move through this process. Here is basically information on moving forward. Here today in the summer of 2015, we will begin those technical studies that I talked about, where we really dig in and get to the heart of all of those issues that have been talked about today. That is required of the environmental process, and we will produce those studies to get the answers that we need. Throughout that process, we will continue having meetings to make sure that we're communicating what we're learning through that study process as we move forward to develop a draft environmental document. That process will take approximately a year. At the draft environmental document stage, there are public hearings that accompany that. That will be held, and then that information is ultimately incorporated into a final environmental document. And in terms of continued community engagement, throughout this process, we have developed some focus groups and working groups that we're working with. We have community meetings where we present information. We go out to neighborhood councils and other types of organizations to make sure that people are informed of what we're doing. And we brief individual stakeholders as well. We want to make sure that as we move forward, we continue those activities, and we also begin to engage in our station areas to develop basically those plans for those station areas and how those station areas can be, can lift the areas around the stations and provide economic wherewithal to places far removed from those stations to bring the benefit of high-speed rail really across the San Fernando Valley and across the Antelope Valley as we move forward. And so that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mame. I think that was certainly a comprehensive overview of the nature of the analytical process here. Let me ask my colleagues if they have questions for Michelle Bame. Vice Chair Richards.
Michelle, can you tell us, as you move forward in this process, can you tell us what's the level of latitude you have during the studies that will be ongoing for the next year with regards to potential tweaking, based upon comments we've heard today, with regards to potential tweaking, and to what extent the actual specific location of the right-of-way? Is there some period or some amount of distance between the left boundary and the right boundary that we can be consistent with the studying that is ongoing in the looking at the possibility of moving the alignments, and how far can we do that?
So the environmental process obviously allows for that evolution of a project through it. And as you do the technical studies and as you get information, you are able then to use that information to create and design and drive the design of a better project. And so as we move through, there is absolutely the opportunity for the project to evolve. There is the opportunity for some of the alignments that we're showing today to be retired, depending on the outcome and the information that we receive from studies. And so I would just say that the environmental process is very much set up to acknowledge the fact that it has to exist in the real world, and that things change, information is gathered, and it needs to be able to allow for that in order to get to the best possible route selection. And in fact, the environmental process even has opportunities to look at things once the document is completed. There are amendments that can be done to an environmental document in order to allow it to speak to basically that future case when it goes into construction.
And so we've seen the alignment, or the evolution of these alignments. Is it reasonable to assume that what you'll be studying over the next year are iterations of what we are seeing here, as opposed to the possibility of a completely different alignment evolving during this next year's study?
At this juncture, when you take a look at the range of those alternatives, you have something far to the west, you have several things in the middle, you have something further to the east. Within that range of alternatives, that is the kind of the spot that we have identified that we believe the ultimate best route would be located. If you were to move further east, it would be difficult to maintain the ability to connect where we want to connect. If you were to move further west, again, you would be adding dramatic mileage to the overall alignment. And so within the parameters that we're currently looking at, we believe there is an answer there. We believe that it will take work, that we have a distance to travel to get to that answer, but we believe that they represent essentially the world that we will be looking at over the course of the next year.
And just, sure.
If I could just add, it is, as you've seen, and as Michelle presented, the alignments have evolved over the last few years, and it's an information-driven process, particularly now. To date, as Michelle explained, the identification of alignments and issues has been at a fairly high level of information. Now we start to dive in deeper, and based on the information that becomes available, would make adjustments and adaptations to that could result in adjustments to the alignments. Ultimately, we'll bring that to the board through the formal process, but it's our job over the next year or so to take in all the information that we can, adapt to it, and make adjustments.
And that information would include continuing information from the public?
Absolutely, as well as, and through a variety of mechanisms, through the public meetings, through written submissions, through any other form, as well as coordination with resource agencies, both federal and state. So when we identify, for instance, when Michelle put on the map the sensitive wildlife areas and things like that, that's not a determination we make. That's what the agencies with the statutory responsibilities for those areas tell us are the sensitive areas.
If I might just jump ahead of my colleagues for 1 second here. This morning, LA Councilmember Fuentes referred to a letter that he had sent to me and the authority and a response that I gave back to him. And the nature of his letter was that there were certain issues that, if you look at the layers of issues that you presented, I think very well for people, but that there were certain issues that seemed to stand out as having immediate concerns that could be potential showstoppers and the most prominent of those would be the interference with aquifer resources if we were looking at the tunneling routes of any of the E1, 2, or 3 routes. And his letter asked that we accelerate or take a snapshot or put an early filter on those issues because while what you're laying out here is a very thorough environmental process that we've gone through in other projects, what he was saying was, look, if there's some things that are of immediate concern, why don't you guys find that out, or at least do a screening assessment of it. I told him in response that I thought that was a reasonable way to proceed. I didn't see it as something that would interfere with the thorough environmental analysis, but you know, we've heard today, and I'm very sensitive to this, not only in Southern California, but throughout the state. The state's real estate disclosure laws require people to notify any prospective buyer of the pendency of this. So if there are routes or things like that that we can legitimately narrow out, we should do that, but we need to have the information to do that or else we're challenged. So his question was whether or not we could have that overlay on top of the thorough environmental process of some of these key issues. And I told him, after consultation with Mr. Morales and the staff, that I thought we could. You and I have discussed this. Can you just take a moment and elaborate on what that expectation might be so that the public could have a better appreciation of it?
Certainly. So we have, over the course of the past several weeks, been developing a scope of work specifically to address this water issue. We have been in conversation with several of our institutions of higher learning within the state of California in terms of producing a 6-month study that would be completed by the end of this year that could bring to the fore some of the answers with regards to the water that we discussed. So that would be the first layer. The second layer is we've been looking and talking to our technical team about advancing the completion dates for some of those technical studies that we would need to be producing anyway so that we could get early feedback on some of those to help drive these decisions moving forward so that sooner rather than later we could begin to start narrowing the field, if you would, in terms of where an ultimate best route would be located.
Ms. Perez-Estolano.
Yeah, and thanks a lot, Michelle, for that. That's very helpful. I just want to say, I think with the comments and issues that have been raised today by everyone that we've heard, and Michelle, I just have a question for, this is a draft document, am I right, or are we hard with this? Because I noticed some, I don't know if other folks noticed, but we need some tightening up on this, so I just want to say that that I did flag and tag a bunch of things, and I want to make sure that you know that we have some feedback for you on the SAA.
Thank you.
Okay. But that, there's a lot of comments and issues that have been raised by the community, by stakeholders, by elected officials and interested persons. I have had personally the true benefit of touring San Fernando, of touring Shadow Hills, of going to talking with elected officials, almost the entire San Fernando City Council, and I think what we're hearing is that there's a need to have a determination, and that actually, I don't think that more time is necessary if in fact we can get these studies done. If we can get these studies done, as you say, in 6 months, and those can come back to the board, then I think that the board can then take a look at what those studies are saying and help us actually understand if there's any actions at that time we can take. Is that basically what you're telling us, is that you will have within 6 months additional information with the studies and findings of these summary reports?
Yes, that's what we are crafting into our schedule right now, to make sure that we have those opportunities to do the checkup with the board, also to provide that information again to the public, right, so that we can make sure that we hone in and get to those answers as quickly as possible, because we know this is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, well then if that's true, Chair, I would like to make a motion.
All right.
Are we losing?
Since there's no high-speed rail service between Northern and Southern California, I understand one of our members has a flight that she must catch. But,
do we have a quorum?
Yeah, we still do.
2, 4, 5. We do have a quorum.
Okay. I'll just make a motion real quick. Can I do that now, or do you want to?
Well, I just want to clarify one thing maybe before you make the motion.
Go.
If I could. That the studies we're talking about would not be, we don't believe at this point, sufficient to make alignment decisions, but they would be able to inform as to whether certain options are viable or not. And then continue the detailed study, and could also help answer, we heard questions today from people about impact on water and, well, what does mitigation mean? And this study could help explain what has been done on those types of things as well. So it would advance the program significantly, but not lead to an alignment decision in 6 months.
Although, in fairness, it could identify a showstopper.
It could. Yes.
So, I just wanted to clarify that. I don't think it wouldn't necessarily supplant the normal alignment analysis we're doing, but I think the question here is, what we've heard today is people saying, in their view, in the areas where they live, they believe that there are really serious issues here. Rather than wait 2 years to understand that, if somebody can go out and take a snapshot of that right now and say, well, wait a minute, is that really a showstopper? If it is, it's a showstopper. If it's not, then we're proceeding through the rest of the process.
And so I guess with that, I'd like to just make the motion that we do that in fact, after those studies come back, that they are brought to the board, that we get to take a look and see what that says in terms of any actions that we can take at that time, so that we can help folks, and we continue this community outreach and robust effort to get folks in and give them many opportunities to participate as much and as often as they can. So I think that that's what I'd like to do, is propose that after the studies are done, Chair, that we bring that back to the board, we take a look and see if there's any actions appropriate for the board to take.
All right, that's a motion.
I second that.
It's, that's, yeah. Just before, as Ms. Selby's walking out, is there any discussion on that motion? We can have further discussion on the thing, but it seems to me like it's a very sensible approach. All right, would the secretary please call the roll?
Call Thea first.
No, I'm sorry, Thea?
Call Thea.
Thea? Just stand there.
Just stay right there.
If you would.
If she leaves, then I think I have the swing vote, so she better stay right there.
I think she gets to vote until she gets to that
Director
door.
Selby.
Aye.
Thank you.
What a smart district secretary.
Bye.
Vice Chair Richards.
Yes.
Director Rossi. Director Perez-Estolano.
Yes.
Director Selby. Director Correa.
Aye.
Ms. Selby's recorded as
Sorry.
right.
Correa.
Aye.
Chair Richard.
Aye. Thank you for that.
Oh, correct.
Who's that guy at the end?
The guy.
Mr.
Okay.
Chopped Liver.
Sorry, a little too late in the day. New Director Curtin.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, we're starting to get a little bit punch drunk up here.
Well,
But,
thank you.
Catherine, thank you. I think that's a very good suggestion, and it gives people a time frame to, and I would say also, we'll make available, Mr. Morales, unless you see any problem with it, I think we should commit that we'll make available through the website just an indication when Ms. Bain was talking about selection of somebody from the university system or something like that to do these studies, so that people can have a sense of what that is and what the scope is.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there other questions for Ms. Bain at this point?
Thank you for a very good presentation, Michelle.
I thought the
Yeah.
presentation was well done.
I thought so too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And for your time yesterday driving the line. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, a number of us have now done the alignments, and I will just say to my colleagues that we did this in the Central Valley before we voted. I think virtually every member of the board had an on-the-ground understanding of what was going on. I can't speak for anybody else personally. I think it's really essential before we make decisions that affect communities the way.
And
that
I will, I have made an invitation for myself to go to Acton and to the other communities, Agua Dulce and the others, and I'd like to understand, as I have done in the San Fernando Valley, what are the issues that we're facing here in Southern California. So I'd like to put those on the calendar as soon as possible, and we'll coordinate with our team.
At this point, we still have a few agenda items left. I think what I'm going to suggest is that we take a break for 15 minutes. Again, of course, this is a public meeting. Anybody's welcome to stay if they really want to hear the presentation on the rail delivery partner or the Williamson Act or anything else. But we'll take a break, and for those who choose to leave at this point, thank you again for taking the time to come today. Thank you. Yeah, the board will be back in session. We're going to go out of order. We're going to move to items 6 and 7. I'm sorry. We'll do 7 first. Okay. Mr. McLaughlin, I guess you already knew we were doing 7 first because you're standing at the podium. I see a green light, so I think you're on.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and board members, Mark McLaughlin, the Director of Environmental Services for the Authority, and wanted to bring to you today the habitat mitigation contract for Fresno Bakersfield CP 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, can you, or just hold the mic.
How about, is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. In January, you authorized our staff to issue an RFP to procure Fresno to Bakersfield habitat mitigation services, and the contract resulting from this RFP will deliver turnkey mitigation for the project, shifting the risk of achieving agency success criteria from the authority to this mitigation contractor. For this RFP, the authority received 2 proposals in response to this RFP. After a full evaluation, the authority identified Westervelt Ecological Services as the successful proposer. And a little bit about Westervelt. They're a very qualified team to implement our mitigation solution for CP 2, 3, and 4. Their team has purchased tens of thousands of acres of conservation land, restored more than 10,000 acres of vernal pool landscape, and completed hundreds of endangered species projects focusing on large-scale mitigation. Among other required criteria, their proposal demonstrated that they did have the experience and the project understanding to satisfy the authority's mitigation needs. In addition, Westervelt is committed to using the 35% small businesses, meeting the authority's 30% goal, and this is inclusive of a 10% DBE and 3% DBBE goal. The Westervelt cost proposal for this RFP is $48,895,000, which is within the estimated budget, roughly between $44,116,200 to $53,919,800 in that range. This price includes all the necessary tasks to complete the mitigation, including the purchase of the land, the conservation easements, any improvements, such as restoration or creation, and long-term management by a third-party conservation easement holder. So for this, the staff recommends to the board and the CEO to complete negotiations with Westervelt and execute a contract with this firm. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Okay. Ms. Perez-Estolano?
Mark, first of all, sorry. For the benefit of those who possibly, for our new members, but also for the benefit of for the community to understand what, we used to do these, we used to conduct these services internally, these processes internally, correct?
For our first, for instance, for Merced Fresno CP1, we're currently closing on our Lazy K project, which we did internally for the project. Very problematic in our system that we have within the state system. So the focus at the direction of CEO was to put it out to the private sector to competitively bid the services to provide full turnkey services for the project for mitigation and put it in the hands of the right companies that know how to do it.
A key element to that is we're not in the business of maintaining this site long term. It's again a turnkey effort, so we think it's a much more efficient way to do it and get really high quality mitigation.
And Lazy K is a turnkey also that we're putting in the hands of the right people, the landowner, and services will be provided for that site also. Similar, but the authority did that itself based upon the time frame.
Right. I recall it because it was complicated and there was a lot of time and effort that you had put in and our team had put in, and so putting it in, as you say, folks who know how to do this is what they do.
Yes.
And you managing that is why we're going out to private sector to help us complete that.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And the time frames that we need the services to be provided.
Thank you.
Other questions? Motion?
Move.
Moved by Ms. Perez-Estolano, seconded by Vice Chair Richards. Will the Secretary please call the roll? And don't forget the new guy.
Vice Chair Richards.
Yes.
Director Perez-Estolano.
Yes.
Director Correa.
Yes.
Director Curtin.
Aye.
Chair Richard.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Number 6. Number 8. Okay. Item 8. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm presenting the item number 8, which is requesting the board to make some findings required by the Government Code 51292 under the Williamson Act. The Williamson Act is an act that allows farmland owners to enter contracts with local counties to keep that property in agricultural use for a 10-year period in exchange for locked-in property tax rates based on agricultural use. When the High-Speed Rail Authority acquires property that's has these Williamson contracts burdened with the land, they have to make a couple of findings. And those findings are that the land being selected that's under the Williamson Act is not being selected because of its lower property value given its agricultural preserve status. And then secondly, there's no reasonably feasible alternative location for the improvement. This same board item has been presented to the board multiple times already because we're presenting them county by county as we're going through the property acquisition process. For this particular item, we're asking the board to make these findings for 76 parcels in Kern County and then 2 additional parcels, one in Kings County and one in Tulare County. All of these parcels are going to be purchased for the construction for CP23. The steps in the Williamson Act I've mentioned, and the findings that are required are supported, and I've have it written down the reasons for the supporting the two findings, which was part of the environmental clearance process, and I can answer any questions you might have.
No, we've been through this drill before. I think this is fairly straightforward. This is basically a way to protect agricultural landowners from lower valuations that were associated with their doing something good, and so which is the Williamson Act reservation of that property for agricultural purposes. I think the board has seen this kind of issue before. So, motion?
I'll move it.
Okay. Moved by Ms. Perez Estelano, seconded by Vice Chair Richards. I'm sorry,
Vice
would
Chair
you please call the
Richards?
roll?
Yes.
Director Perez Estelano?
Yes.
Director Correa?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Aye.
Chair Richard?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we go to 6.
Item 6, and it's easier for me to figure out what's next when there are only 2. Mr. Jarvis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chairman Richard and board members. I can say evening. I haven't been able to say that before.
We don't want to make a habit of it.
No, no. Okay, so this is to request the board's approval to issue a request for qualifications, an RFQ, to procure a contract for our project and construction management PCM services for construction package 4. And the PCM services are crucial to the effective management and oversight of the design-build contract and in support of the authority. And this is a qualifications-based contract, and the procurement is governed by architectural and engineering standards. And so there's a couple major milestones that we have coming up that we anticipate. We plan on issuing the request for qualifications on June 11th, pending approval. And the statement of qualifications are scheduled to be due on August 4th. And so regarding the scope of the PCM will be responsible for administering the design-build contract and overseeing the design-build. So some of the specific elements of that scope include project management and administration, quality assurance, verification and validation, and self-certification oversight, independent checking engineer and independent site engineer, safety and security oversight, project controls and risk management, and engineering, construction, and environmental oversight, third-party, other contracts and utility coordination, and public outreach. So within the RFQ itself, there's a more extensive statement of the scope of services. And within any given year, we can alter the services provided by the PCM through the annual work plan that we develop with the PCM based upon where the design-build contract is at in its administration. And so the way we will evaluate for the procurement, there'll be a statement of qualifications. The SOQs will be technically evaluated by the authority, public employees, and that will be worth 60% of the overall score. And there will also be the oral discussions and interviews, and those will be worth 40% of the overall score. So the oral discussions and interview evaluations will be followed by a final ranking of the teams, negotiation with the top-ranked team, and a request for approval of the award of the contract by this board. So that's what lies ahead. And you know, by starting the PCM services RFQ procurement at this time, the CP4 PCM will be under contract, and it'll be a valuable resource for the authority as we go through the procurement process for our design builder for CP4. And the contract will be issued, does include the board's adopted 30% small business participation goal. So it is recommended that the board adopt a resolution approving issuance of a request for qualifications to procure project and construction management services for construction package 4 with a contract compensation range of $28 million to $33 million and a term extending up to 1 year past substantial completion of the CP4 design build contract. And I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
I thought the write-up was pretty straightforward, but I'll ask my colleagues if people have questions.
This will just be a quick one, Mr. Chair. Scott, on page 2, the paragraph that's underneath the list of possible assignments to the PCM.
Yes.
You referenced that it would be that you would be subject to future negotiations with the authority. Do you mean, would it be negotiations, would it be more correct that it would be future direction from the authority since we've already entered into a contract with them?
Yes, it doesn't involve contract negotiations.
Yeah.
But But there is a bit of an element of we work with the PCM and develop that annual work plan. But you are correct.
But we're not negotiating.
We're not
with
negotiating a contract at that point. Yes.
Right, just with that correction.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Other questions?
Just one quick. I'll try and fill Mike Rossi's shoes for a second. But authority staff, one of the things that we brought up in our meeting before was this issue of the appropriate authority staff and either public employees that are comprised of the technical team that evaluates the proposals.
Yes.
Just want to be assured, just to make clear, Scott, that that's something that's very important.
Yes.
That we have the people who are married up with these skill sets reviewing and evaluating the proposals that are submitted.
Understood.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Quickly, may I follow up? Is that the public employee committee you're talking about to do the interviews, or I didn't quite follow that?
What we have there's three main committees. There's a small group that does a review when it comes in, just to make sure it meets all the administrative requirements. Then there's a technical support group that provides more support to the overall evaluation steering committee, and then that higher level management team makes the final decision.
And they are the reference to public employees is that they are those people who are making the recommendation then for the contract award are all public sector employees.
So the higher level committee?
The higher level committee consists of those, right? And typically it's typically 5 on a committee. What we'll often do on this is have 3 or 4 authority staff, possibly 1 other staff from another state agency, and then in some cases a local agency in the jurisdiction where we'll be, but all public employees then making the ultimate determination of and the scoring.
Do you reach out occasionally, or if needed, if there's a skill set that may not be reflected in a public employee setting?
They're required to be.
Yeah, we under state procurement law, that committee has to be public sector employees, but we do utilize private sector expertise to review the particular aspects of it and provide advice to the committee members.
Right. Okay.
Other questions? We've had pretty good competition on these in the past.
Yes, and there still seems to be a lot of interest.
A lot of
interest
interest
in
in
it.
it.
Yes, that's great.
And actually, if I could just ask one question about not the procurement of the new construction management, but while we're sitting here, since we're sitting here,
Still sitting.
At some point, it doesn't have to be tonight, but there was quite a discussion about how quality control, quality assurance programs were going to be carried out on this, which is different which Mr. Curtin is very familiar with. It's very different under this model because it's a design-build model where a lot of what would normally be quality control is passed on to the contractor in the form of quality assurance reports and so forth with oversight and verification. And the construction management contract, this was an issue with the PEG folks who felt that function should remain in the public sphere. But we had, I think, a high level of confidence that we could maintain quality control on the job site through that quality assurance program where the construction management company is the representative of the authority. I'd just be interested, and again, we don't have to get into it tonight, but how that's working out now that we're starting to get into some activities where quality assurance comes into play with real physical construction, and making sure that we kind of check in on that we're still comfortable that that's the right way to go.
Right. We are very comfortable that it's the right way to go. We have made some adjustments from CP1 already, where in the CP1 contract, it was actually in the scope of the design builder to retain that independent checking function.
Right.
Although they reported to us.
But we put that into the the construction management contract for CP2 and 3, right?
And for this as well, so
That's
we've
correct.
made that adjustment. I think the bottom line on that is that we're talking about a licensed engineer in the state
has to sign off.
Signing off on something, whether that person is a state employee or a private sector engineer, really should not make a difference. They're signing, you know,
as a
based on their
licensed
as a licensed professional with their license on the hook.
Technically,
if they do anything inappropriate.
they're signing off on behalf of the state, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And I just want to emphasize that contractually, the design builder is responsible for quality control. So, I mean, we feel like we have very strong contractual provisions, putting them responsible for a quality control program. But then we do have this independent checking engineer, independent site engineer at another level for that check.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you remind me again when, it's in here, but, so we're looking at this person being on board when?
In the fall. The SOQs are due in August, and then we'll do the evaluation and negotiation, and we believe we'll have them on board in early fall.
And remind me again when the CP4 contract goes out on the street?
The CP4 RFP is out.
Is out.
Yeah, and so we're shooting to have an executed design build contract late fall, early winter.
Right, but the idea would be to have
these few folks,
the PCM on board to help us through the evaluation process and be on board the design builder for CP4.
Right, provide that support in the procurement process.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Other questions? Okay, motion?
Second.
It's been moved by Vice Chair Richards and seconded by Board Member Perez Estelano. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Richards.
Yes.
Director Perez Estelano.
Yes.
Director Correa.
Yes.
Director Curtin.
Yes.
Chair Richard.
Yes. Before we go to our last item, I just wanted to, I'm sorry?
No.
I missed it. Can you just take a second and tell us what, since we're talking about construction, what's the status of construction in the Central Valley right now?
Sure. Scott, you can fill in, but basically we have been over the last several months doing significant work with utility relocation, other preparatory sort of work related to the project, and have now begun in earnest and in a sustained manner the vertical construction elements, and the most prominent feature being the Fresno River Viaduct, which is underway now, and so that'll be the first real piece of.
What? I didn't hear that. What was underway?
It's the viaduct, Fresno River Bridge, one of the larger structures and one of the long lead time item structures. So that's why it's one of the first that's being built. Over the next few weeks, there will be about 5 additional sites throughout the 29 miles that's part of CP1 under construction now. And so we'll see a significant ramping up of all of the activity associated with the construction over the next few weeks.
We didn't really need you. I'm kidding.
Just couldn't stay away.
Yeah, just kidding.
Oh, we gotta vote on this first.
We really need you.
By the way, just so you know, Danny,
Yes, okay, yes.
on that Fresno River Bridge,
So now we're on to
according to Robbie Hunter, that bridge will require 50 iron workers just for that particular structure. So,
Well, being an iron worker, he would know. It probably really only needs about 6.
he said that.
I want a copy of that tape.
Yeah.
All right.
And he's my friend.
I know. All right. Thank you. We will move now to the Item 5, the last item on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, on this item, I'd like to inform the board that I may have a potential conflict of interest arising from a campaign contribution I received within the last year on a campaign for local county supervisor. So given that potential conflict of interest, I'm going to recluse myself from not only this vote, from this debate as well, and I will step out.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if you would please recognize that Board member Selby has just returned as well.
Do I need to do that after you just did it?
He's just staff.
Ms. Selby has returned, to the great delight and the appreciation of her colleagues.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Jarvis.
All right. Well, the California High-Speed Rail program is definitely expanding from primarily a planning and preliminary design phases to also include project delivery and ultimately operation. So as the authority evolves to meet these changing needs, the role of our key consultants need to be adjusted to reflect the status of our program. So if you remember, at the board's November 2014 meeting, staff presented the procurement schedule for the Rail Delivery Partner, or RDP contract. And at that board meeting, the market outreach with industry that had been conducted to date was described. And that outreach included communication and meetings with industry during October of 2014. And then the industry outreach continued after the November board meeting, including release of a draft RFQ in December, receipt of comments, and one-on-one meetings with potential bidders in January, and then an industry forum in January. And that outreach effort resulted in 10 firms participating in the market sounding and 133 attendees to the industry forum. So we really put a lot of emphasis on competition in this process. And so the authority issued the RFQ for Rail Delivery Partner Services on January 29th of this year. And so the purpose of this item is to authorize the CEO to enter into a contract with Parsons Brinkerhoff, including execution on behalf of the authority for services for program management, integration and coordination, and program delivery. And so this is also a qualification-based contract and procured through the state's architectural and engineering requirements. So to go through the history a little bit, on March 23rd, the authority received statement of qualifications, SOQs, from two offers, Bechtel Infrastructure Corporation and Parsons Brinkerhoff, with the team also including Network Rail Consulting and Lee Fisher for Parsons Brinkerhoff. And these were two very strong teams. They were truly world leaders in the industry. And the RDP evaluation process was very involved and robust. The SOQs were analyzed and evaluated by a team of public employees, supported by the authority's legal and financial consultants, Nossaman and KPMG, respectively. And similar to the discussion that we had, there was an evaluation from a manager from the Office of Procurement and Contracts who performed the technical pass-fail review, and then the reference check subcommittee, which was chaired by an authority manager and assisted by the authority's financial consultants. And then there was the evaluation committee, which consisted of 6 members. They're all high-level public managers, including a project delivery manager from Caltrans, a very high Caltrans manager. And so the committee was chaired by a senior authority manager, and the evaluation committee determined that both offers should be shortlisted and invited to interview. So on April 15th and 16th, the evaluation committee held 4 sessions of interviews with each shortlisted offers over the 2 days. So the interviews were a combination of presentations followed by question and answer periods. And so the evaluation committee deliberated on April 15th and 16th and determined the final consensus scoring for the interviews. And the determination of the ranking was based on the highest total score, and that consisted of an SOQ score and an interview score, each with a total possible score of 1,000 points. So at the completion of the process, Parsons Brinkerhoff finished with a final score of 1,643 points, and Bechtel finished with 1,601 points. And the selection process was very competitive, and although not ultimately selected, the Bechtel team was quite strong and did well in the process. So based on the results, the evaluation committee recommended entering into negotiations with Parsons Brinkerhoff as the top-ranked offerer. And this recommendation was presented to our chief program manager on April 16th. And then the firms were then notified of the results, and the scoring was posted to the authority's website. So it's of note that approximately 50% of the work of the RDP contract will be performed by a team of very diverse and experienced subcontractors or subconsultants. And the RDP is required to comply with the board's 30% small business participation goal. And Parsons Brinckerhoff submitted a proposed team that is comprised of numerous firms that meet that small business requirement, and that is detailed in the board memo. So as far as the team presented by Parsons Brinckerhoff, it combined significant resources and expertise in high-speed rail. And PB brought significant new team members while integrating operations expertise into their team. And so Parsons Brinckerhoff, I think you know them very well. They're a global consulting firm, and they assist public and private clients to plan, develop, design, construct, operate, and maintain critical infrastructure. So now additionally, Network Rail Consulting and Lee Fisher will both provide major contributions as members of the Parsons Brinckerhoff team. Network Rail Consulting is the international consulting firm of Network Rail, which is the authority responsible for the United Kingdom's railway network. And so Network Rail has extensive experience in developing, operating, and maintaining high-speed rail networks, and has been accountable for the safe, efficient delivery of rail services in the United Kingdom. And Lee Fisher is a global management consulting firm with over 65 years of expertise and experience in infrastructure advisory and consulting services, including public-private partnerships. And Lee Fisher provides strategic advice informed by delivery knowledge and has served numerous high-speed rail clients through the project lifespan. So between them, the partnership of Parsons Brinckerhoff, Network Rail, and Lee Fisher has delivered high-speed rail on 4 continents and more than 25 projects, providing leadership from planning through operations. So this partnership, combined with the numerous and diverse sub-consultants, is the right team to work with the authority to deliver the California high-speed rail system. Now I'm going to take a moment and talk about the scope of work a little bit, because this is a very involved contract. So the RDP contract is divided into 3 primary areas of responsibility: program management, program integration and coordination, and program delivery. So for program management, the RDP will manage, conduct, and provide oversight for the functional components of the program. And this will provide recommendations and to the support to the authority for critical decision making regarding program delivery approach, business cases, and master planning for the program. Now, so for program integration and coordination, the RDP will provide oversight for coordination and compatibility between projects, phases, contracts, and manage integration and integration requirements and specifications for elements of the system through implementation and operation. And so for program delivery, for each project within the program, on-site teams of professionals will be dedicated to each of the functional areas of responsibility, such as environmental, right-of-way, design and construction. And these individuals will oversee and monitor the performance of the associated work packages under their assigned discipline. So again, it's a very comprehensive contract. So as far as the administration of the contract, the administration of the RDP contract will be structured into 2 tiers. The first tier is actual approved cost plus a partial fee. And the second tier is the remaining fee, which will be pooled and may be allocated according to performance in meeting program milestones and deliverables. So the RDP procurement process is now complete, and it is the recommendation of authority staff that the board confirm the finding of the evaluation committee and the recommendation of the chief program manager that Parsons Brinckerhoff is the top-ranked offerer for the rail delivery partner contract. And the board is further requested to authorize the CEO to take steps necessary to enter into a contract with Parsons Brinckerhoff, including the execution on behalf of the authority for the total contract price not to exceed $700 million for a term of 7 years. And I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Well, first I think the CCO, the Chief Choo-Choo Officer, had something he wanted to add. So.
Too many years in construction.
Mr. Chairman, just a few things, and I think obviously this is a large, complex project, so I think it's important to provide a little additional context and how this contract and this contract or this team ties in with our organization and our organizational approach. And as you know, we have a lean approach to the state organization. Just as a way of comparison, We do, by design, roughly 10% of our work is done in-house, and we outsource 90%. That contrasts with most state agencies, and Caltrans as an example, which does 90% of the work internally and outsources 10. There are reasons for the different model. Caltrans has a pipeline of 650 projects coming through, so it makes sense that they have planning people, design, construction, everything throughout the process. As we move through this program, because we don't have 650 projects coming through, as we complete the environmental phase, we can wind down that part of our program. So it doesn't make sense to build up that staff. And so what this approach lets us do is transition and then bring in the expertise where we need it, when we need it. By going out and securing it this way, we truly are getting global expertise that we can tap into, basically rent it as we need it, and then move on. I do want to reinforce something Scott said. We got the benefit of two truly world-class, the two leading firms in the world who do this kind of work, and the teams that they put together. So we feel very good about that. And the overall cost, again, having put it in that context, I would also note that the support costs, what this falls under, are very much in line with what you would see as typical support costs. It's just a question of, are you paying state employees or private employees and in what mix? But the total cost would be roughly the same if we built up a big state organization over time. In fact, would be lower because we wouldn't have the long-term obligations to those state employees. So I just wanted to provide that context.
Thank you. No, I think it was a testament to the confidence that the private sector, the contracting sector, has in the project and the progress that's been made in the last several years, that we would get those two teams to bid as aggressively as they did. And I did have an opportunity to meet somebody, a high official from Bechtel, and I expressed our appreciation that they had the interest in the program to bid. And certainly, if it's the will of the board to confer the authority on you to sign this, would congratulate the Parsons Brinkerhoff and Network Rail and associated members team. Clearly, they wanted this and stepped up their game, and that's we respect that and appreciate it. Questions? Ms. Selby, you came back to ask a question about this contract.
I had a question about the interview scoring.
Okay.
It was really interesting that the SOQ scoring was very close.
Yes.
But then the interviewing scoring was really quite dramatically different, and that's of course what made all the difference for Bechtel versus Parsons.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit.
Sure.
That's a good catch.
The interviews, the scoring consisted of three primary areas. The presentation, which was a smaller amount of the overall score, the key personnel participation, and the third area was delivery approach, understanding of the project, and innovative ideas. And that was really the area that Parsons Brinkerhoff set itself apart a bit. A couple of things within that. One was their integration of operations into the program, and really kind of that clear view of where we need to go as a program, that vision to drive us to that operations phase of the program. Also, they really emphasized the need of a truly integrated team with the authority, and came in with some really good ideas on how to integrate as a team. As CEO Morales said, the authority is a very small part in numbers, but a key part in decision making and that playing that government role. So they really came in with some good ideas that we were very positive as far as that integrated team. And then the third area is they brought in some new leadership. They brought in a program director, new program director that we were very impressed with, and some other leaders on their team as well. And so those were kind of the main differentiating points.
Thank you. And then I just had one other question about the way that you structured I think you said the administration, I would call it the money.
Yes.
Where you said you had the 2 tiers, and I thought that was kind of interesting, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about why you structured it that way.
Well,
And when you said,
it was,
and also technically, what does it mean to pool? Because it would say you said the remaining fee will be pooled.
yes, there's $30 million that we've set aside, and if
70 out of the 100 per year, or 70?
$30 million
Total.
Yeah, total.
30 million total.
Yeah. Yep. It's based upon program milestones for delivery. And so to deliver any infrastructure program such as this, there's major milestones that need to be delivered. We've heard a lot today about getting to that environmental clearance, and those are very important milestones. But there's a lot of other ones as well. And we can structure the program over the next 7 years based upon the rail delivery partner's successful delivery of those milestones, and it will be evaluated if they reach those milestones, and then also interim milestones to make it up to those major milestones will be evaluated based upon did they meet the schedule, did they meet the cost, did they meet the quality requirements. And so it's called the performance regime overall. And so that evaluation is performed, and if they do, because that's why it's performance-based, then they would get compensation for meeting those milestones and meeting the schedule requirements. We're actually quite excited about it because in the scope of our program, it's a very small dollar amount, but we think it'll drive behavior on all of us, the authority part as well, as we're part of that team, to really focus on those critical path milestones to deliver the program. And we're all familiar with the cost of money, the time value of money, and if we're able to deliver this program earlier, there's going to be very significant capital savings that would far outweigh this pooled money that we're putting aside for the performance regime.
Yeah.
Let me follow up a little bit on that because I don't quite understand it. You have 2 tiers of 2 types of payments. One of them is based on milestones. The $30 million is the at-risk portion of that $700 million?
Correct.
And that's the portion that's going to be at risk on the basis of the milestones?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
And you, I assume the authority team will be the one driving the milestone questions? And
yes.
Is that
the
all
contract,
done?
it's very clear in the contract that we're in 100% control of developing those.
And are they actually in the contract, or do they evolve over the 7-year process?
What's in the, again, the 2 tiers, the typical contract here, it's basically a time and materials contract with then a margin on top. What we've agreed with them is that 30 million of what would ultimately be that margin is now at risk, and it's now, that's what will be put in the contract. We will then, through the annual work plan process and other steps, identify the milestones and then what it will take for them to achieve that 30 million, and so it's not guaranteed.
So it's
not
really a
guaranteed to them.
$670 million contract with a 30%, $30 million potential bond.
Right. Correct.
Right. Okay. So as part of their oversight, we just approved a little package on construction management for construction, whatever, CP4. Will they be overseeing the overseeing?
Yes, in part, and one of the reasons, as Mr. Richards asked the question about the annual negotiation of the construction management contract, one of the things we will be looking at is the right balance between what the RDP might do versus the construction manager.
RDP
and making sure
standing for what?
Excuse me. The rail delivery partner, the contract in front of us. What we want to do is make sure we avoid redundancy in functions.
Well, I'm not saying oversight of oversight is necessarily a bad thing, but if everybody's telling everybody what to do, it could get a little confusing out here.
Right.
So I'm sort of concerned that we let these contracts out. Oversight's good, but, well, maybe you'll do it this way or that way. It gets to be complicated. So and 30 million's at risk. I like the at-risk concept. So I wasn't involved in the conversations earlier, but when I saw a $700 million contract,
You thought you might pay attention.
I might, yeah. Considering this is my first meeting, I think everything else is going to be a piece of cake after this one. But thank the audience that's still here for bringing me in to the real issues, and then this is good to know. I just wanted to make sure I had a little better sense of that.
I would just say, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Can I just, I like to say we're all adults here, so we can talk about things that have been issues in the past and so forth. But for Mr. Curtin's benefit, early on in the project, a different contract team that also involved one of these companies, really held the whip hand on how this project was being developed. And when I first met Mr. Morales, he made the comment to me that there are too many decisions that are being made, and he was one of the contractors. There are too many decisions being made by contractors that really needed to be made by public officials and the public agencies. We have turned that around completely, and I think even the contractor personnel beyond Jeff felt that this was not a sustainable situation. And since that time, I think over the last couple of years, particularly with the creation of the Finance and Audit Committee, with the nature of the people who've been appointed to this board, who I think are very committed to a proper level of governance, and it's always a hard balance to try to strike. I think that these days the right decisions are being made at the public sphere and basically being carried out by the technical contracting team. But I would just submit that that is one of the areas, in addition to the one that you mentioned, that we need to just continue to keep our eye on. That we don't slide into a situation where, when Jeff talked about having an integrated organization, it really does mean that I think that there's a public employee, public official, somebody representing the people who is basically in the place of carrying out the program objectives, making the right decisions, and then with the assistance and help of these others. So it's a large contract, but I think as long as we keep it in that context, that's at least one of the things we have to keep our eye on. Then obviously cost control, making sure that there's efficacy of the work being carried out in an efficient fashion. But it's a really interesting model for a project of this size to have a major multi-hundred-million-dollar consortium of companies that is essentially supposed to be the right-hand partner of the agency. And I think it's kind of an exciting concept, but only if we manage it correctly. And I appreciate the fact that as a new member you're focused on that right away, because I think that's what makes this board as strong as I think this board is. In fact,
Well, I also see the board moving into a more dynamic direction here with this contract, but also reflection of the fact that we're moving from sort of a design build process to a more public-private partnership process,
right.
Which it's got a whole set of different issues, and much of it has to do with risk transfer and that sort of thing. So I like the idea of the 30 million at risk. I probably would have pushed for another 30, but that's clear. At least
I'm sorry, is that an amendment to the motion?
No. I think it's a clear signal.
I just wanted to see the blood drain out of people's face.
An amendment to the negotiation.
All right.
You're right.
Well,
Mr. Chair, could I?
No, I just want to say one thing. That's the reason why in my briefing with the staff, I wanted to have the scope of work itemized almost, which is why Scott did that, which is, this is about project management, the integration and delivery, which is all predicated on an innovative approach that we're looking for. So just for the benefit of our new member, that's kind of, we wanted to map that out because some of the issues are, how as Dan had said, we've kind of been at this for a while, and we need to know that there's going to be a fresh kind of approach to this, and so I'm excited to see it, and I'm very excited about what this means for the authority and how we're going to deliver the program.
Yeah, and I just wanted to note that, as Mr. Curtin said, we're moving into a whole different model here that does involve public-private partnerships and so forth, and I would note that that's why I was so thrilled that Assembly Speaker Tony Atkins appointed Danny Curtin, because he has tremendous experience in precisely that area. So it's going to be very good as we move forward.
Okay, just one last comment from me, at least anyway. This is a different approach and it's evolutionary for us, but I also just want to reinforce for the board and the public that we're not breaking new ground here in this approach. This sort of integrated organization is one used very commonly elsewhere in the country and certainly overseas. And I've had the chance to work in them, as have key members from the team. So it's a time-tested model that we're just putting to use because it makes the most sense for us as we deliver this program.
Okay, other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval as presented.
All right. Okay, it was moved by Vice Chair Richards, seconded by Vice Chair Selby. Would you please call the roll?
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Director Perez-Estolano?
Yes.
Vice Chair Selby?
Yes.
Director Curtin?
Yes.
Chair Richard?
Yes. I want to congratulate the PB, Network Rail, et cetera team. You guys are going to help us build the biggest infrastructure project in America, which is a really great thing, so congratulations. And with that, I also want to thank our new Vice Chair for accommodating our situation when Mr. Perea informed us that he was going to need to recuse himself. That was above and beyond the call of duty, and we really appreciate it. So I think that I'm going to exercise the prerogative of the chair and adjourn the meeting at this particular point. I want to thank everybody. It was a long day, but I actually thought it was a very important day for the communities as well as for us up here. And so thank everybody for their participation. I want to thank my colleagues, but I also I want to again thank the staff. I think the staff worked very hard to get ready for this meeting, not only the Southern California staff, but the Sacramento staff, Mr. Drozd and others in Sacramento, our team over here that was supporting us, and everybody worked really hard, and it's been a very, very long couple of days. So I want to express appreciation, which I'm sure is shared. I express on behalf of my colleagues as well. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.
This meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.